start recording at three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your Spin, and I'm joined by my co-host Rex. And Rex, good to see you from since we missed you last week. And one thing I kind of wanted to start off with was it was Coronation Weekend in England, and I don't know, did you celebrate it by maybe rewatching The Patriot on the weekend, or how did you celebrate the weekend?
Oh, yeah, the Patriot would have been good because I don't know. I'm not really a fan of Charles for obvious reasons. So I didn't really care, honestly. I just liked some of the funny images coming out from the coronation that we saw. We saw that kid dancing and things like that. That was kind of cool. But other than that, I didn't really care, honestly. But the soccer was good. The soccer was really good.
Soccer was good, yeah. And you maybe have some common cause with some Liverpool fans because they didn't necessarily take a liking to it. They tried to do the national anthem thing in all these stadiums, and Liverpool fans like booed the entire time. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, but I mean, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk. Actually, I do want to get your takes a little bit on what happened with Arsenal and City just a couple weeks back. If that's not too long, so we'll try to get some of that in as well. But for story of the week, I had to switch this like a couple of times now because first I wanted to lead off. I thought it was going to be Big Sam coming back, Sam Allardyce or Sam Allardyce as he liked to call himself. Yeah,
You'd be better if you did.
and
Yeah.
he had an interesting spell with it, with Leeds in their first game versus Man City, which we'll get to. But I honestly think it was Monday. Monday was bonkers. There was like 20-ish goals, in just 3 games, and almost all of these goals happened in like the first half. The first half was just in every single one of these games, at least 3 or 4 goals were scored. It was wild.
It really was. It was crazy. And I mean, I was busy for a period of it, so I didn't watch it,
Hmm.
but I just kept pulling it up on my phone. And like every time I looked at my phone, it was like someone had scored at least a goal. At some point, I think the Leicester game, Fulham looked in control, and then I checked my phone, and it was like, Leicester had scored a couple goals. And I was like, whoa. So yeah, it was crazy. And we're seeing a little fight back from these teams near the bottom or at the bottom. I mean, West Ham's probably fine, but we saw them definitely be safe with their win over United, and Southampton tried hard, and the bottom teams are at least trying hard. They're scoring goals now. It's a little too late, probably, but
Hmm.
I'm going to really enjoy the relegation fights, and I might be watching more of those bottom teams. The rest of the way. It's better than watching some of the middle table teams. Like I'm not going to watch Chelsea. They're not going to do anything. So probably stick with this relegation battle.
Yeah, I mean, especially they just to focus on Forest. It was so different to watch how they went about the game versus like last week versus how what they tried to do versus Brentford. I mean, everyone was on the front foot. And
Mm.
to look at what happened with Aston Villa and Wolves, or what happened with Spurs and Crystal Palace. Those games
Oh
were
yeah, gosh.
entirely not this. But anyways, we are going to move on. We are going to start with what happened with Monday. So I think we'll start off with just Fulham and Leicester. And like you said, that this was bonkers. It ended 5-3 with the first goal from William, and then Carlos Vinicius, then then Tom Carney again, and then Barnes made it 4-1. And then at this point, you're wondering, because Barnes scored, I think, sometime in like the 60th minute, and then Vardy got a
Hmm.
PK, and then missed it. And Leicester missed, and Madison missed a PK for Leicester last Monday as well. So two back to back, and two from your, you would imagine your captains or your leaders, and then William was able to get a quick one to make it 5-1, and then Leicester tacked on two at the end. I mean, what was maybe your leadoff story with this?
Oh man, well at first I was like, well, we gotta really talk up Marco Silva, and the job he's done with Fulham has been fantastic, especially without Mitrovic.
Spot on.
But
Yeah.
then just to see the fight back from Leicester was nice. I mean, in this game, it's a little too late, but they still have everything to play for. I mean, it was kind of a bad day for them, to be honest, because Everton, romped to that 5-1 victory. So Everton's up 2 points now, and Leicester's got to somehow catch them. But I take a little bit from that fight back. That's something they can maybe build on, and if they play like they did in the last 20 to 30 minutes, if they play like that the whole game next time out, they might be able to win. And if they win Everton lose, then they're climbing out of the relegation zone. They'd be moving up into 17th and they'd be safe. So they still have everything to play for. So maybe they can just kind of take a little bit of this. They scored two goals in the last 10 minutes. So maybe they can kind of carry that momentum over to the next game, because they're in trouble. They're gonna need at least a win to climb out, and some luck as well. So
Well, they're both them and Leeds, I think, on 30 points now, and I think, I mean, what do you think? 33 would be enough to stay up? Do you think maybe one of them, well, with maybe goal differential that comes into play, or do you think one of those two is going to need maybe a win and a draw in those final three games to make it
yeah,
34?
that's what
I mean,
I think. Yeah,
Everton,
yeah,
Everton, I think, are on 32 with that win
mhm,
yesterday.
yeah. Yeah, Everton's on 32, and then Nottingham Forest is on 33. So yeah, I think it would be a win and a draw probably would get you safe 4 points. But I mean, who knows? Because Nottingham Forest and Everton are a little bit on a hot streak in terms of they just won their last game, so maybe they can carry something over with that. Whereas Leicester and Leeds have kind of been struggling a little bit. They haven't won in a while. I mean, Leicester won like you know 4 games ago. But other than that, like, just based on the form alone, you'd think Everton would be okay because they do have 4 points out of the last 2 games. So I don't know though; it's going to be tight.
And the problem for Leicester was they had a chance to maybe get they had leads in a head to head and they drew that game. They actually had to come back and
Yeah,
draw that game. And then they had when Madison missed that PK last Monday, that was a chance to go up 3-1 and they ended up drawing Everton. And so if you look back, if this doesn't go the way they want, they can maybe look at those two results. To be honest, I mean their running is awful. I think it
yeah,
is. It's Liverpool, and maybe Vardy can get behind Liverpool's back line. We saw Mbeumo kind of making Virgil van Dijk not enjoy his times. I mean Vardy does have the pace to get behind, so maybe we'll see that. And then I think it's Newcastle, and then after that they end with well, it's not West Ham. They end with someone that's close to the bottom as well. So it's
mm,
not. It's maybe it's like Aston Villa or something. So maybe the
yeah,
last game is doable, but the last game gets them to 33 if they don't get anything in Liverpool and Newcastle. But I think, yeah, you mentioned like Mitrovic. The thing I noticed was it was no Pereira either,
mhm,
and he's kind of
yep,
been like their main like playmaker, number 10, and in stepped in Tom Carney, who hasn't really had a lot of playing time, and he stepped up with 2 goals and 2 really good goals, but a really uh, this game was wild because Bird Leno I think had made 6 or 7 saves. I mean Leicester actually Fulham in XG. Um, a lot of this did happen a little bit after Silva made a couple subs. He took off Diop to bring on some young defender who had a mess up for one of Harvey Barnes like late goals. But the main thing that I noticed was Polina and Harrison Reed absolutely dominated Leicester's midfield. I mean, Tielemans and Sumare were no protection at all, and it was a free run in that. In anytime like Leicester misplayed a pass, it was a free run at their back line, and Fulham were just getting behind it, but just for fun, and it was way too easy, and so. That to me was a little surprising. I don't think the shape or team selection worked out for Dean Smith, and frankly I think this would have been kind of a team that maybe Brendan Rodgers would have picked because it was Vardy by himself, and when Madison wasn't able to get it to Vardy, it was hard for Madison to even get on the ball. The first 20 minutes I saw, and he went with Madison, Barnes, and Dennis Pratt, and none offered anything defensively. I didn't
yeah,
think Dennis Pratt
yeah,
offered
sure.
anything at all. So I thought sitting in Didi was insane to me. Because the number of these goals happened from just a loose pass and just there was absolutely no one in the middle of the field to do anything to stop a counter because that's how Fulham were kind of getting all these opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think Dean Smith got the selection right per se. Um, But at least he did kinda change things up later on,
They brought
but,
on Patson
maybe
Daka
he'll take
and
a lesson. Yeah, yeah, maybe he'll take a lesson from that, though, and maybe some of those people will start next game, hopefully.
well, that'd be
I
versus
don't know, we'll
Liverpool. So I
see.
hope I hope he doesn't take the lesson. I hope he
Not for
starts.
you,
I
yeah,
hope he
not for
starts
you.
the same team.
Hopefully for
Uh,
Yeah, but if he learns from those mistakes and picks, maybe the team that was playing better, maybe they can kind of continue with a little bit of momentum, like we were talking about. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, just kind of go over a little bit of the in detail for some of these goals. We don't have to go over every one. I mean, the first one is just kind of a mistake a little bit by Iverson, who was stunning versus Everton. So that's worth saying as well. But this is just kind of a free kick. I think Williams trying to cross the ball in, and Iverson's just kind of late to dive into it. It doesn't really touch anyone, so it just kind of it's just a free kick looped in, and it just kind of bounces in late. And then Leicester did have a chance with Barnes. It was maybe the first time that Madison even got on the ball. And then
Yeah.
Fulham were starting to Fulham were actually wasteful in the beginning because Leicester were not able to defend any kind of corner kick or any kind of set piece. And then they get the second one with Carlos Vinicius, and this is a little bit what I was talking about. I mean, it's Paulina that steals the ball off Samari, and then Harry Wilson carries the ball upfield and then slips a very nice pass to Vinicius, making a run behind him, and it's a really nice finish by Vinicius, who's honestly stepped up, in Mitrovic's stead. Mitrovic, I think, is going to be available for them next game, and Vinicius has at least given Silva something to think about regarding, obviously he'll probably pick Mitrovic, but Vinicius has impressed over the last few games. He looked good versus Liverpool, and he scored a worldie versus Man City, or a really good goal versus Man
Yeah.
City.
They're going to need him too because we don't know how rusty Mitrovic is going to be after that lengthy layoff as well. So, Mitrovic might not even start. He might just try to get, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes first off the bench just to see,
True.
how he's doing and then maybe start after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if he's super rusty and he needs more time, they're definitely going to need Vinicius for sure.
And I mean, I think it's for Southampton too, so that's rotten luck for them. But I think their last chance has already passed them. I mean, the
Yeah.
third goal comes from Tom Carney, and again, Vinicius plays a part in it. He shows really good hold up play. Then he gets the ball to Carney, who kind of fakes the shot, and then cuts onto his left foot, and it's a really good finish. But this again comes from Leicester just giving possession away cheaply, and it was just really easy for Fulham to get in. So that was it. That was the score at halftime, and then they get the fourth one. Right after Fulham have a PK awarded to them, and Fulham actually wait. Oh no, it looks like Fulham had a PK awarded to them, and then they don't get it, but they get a breakaway counter led by Tete. So again, it's I think it's Leicester trying to do some kind of counter, and that's the reason why the fullback's completely caught out of position. Harvey Barnes is also just he's trying to get the ball, waiting for the box, and instead Leicester turn it over, and Tete basically runs. I don't know, 70 yards all the way down the field and down the wing, and then picks out Tarney, who again has a really nice finish. But this kind of showed the problem with Leicester. Their shape was awful all game. There was no protection in midfield, and the wide players offered zero help to the fullbacks. And then
Mhm. Oh yeah,
Leicester
absolutely.
did get something with Barnes, and then probably the change of the game was when Leicester were able to get a PK to make it 4-2, and Vardy missed, or Vardy kind of hit it right to Leno, and then like you said, they tacked on a couple late. Um, but this was Fulham without Mitrovic and Pereira, and it was 3-0 at halftime. It was just it was kind of stunning the way that Leicester kind of went into this game, because you look at the schedule, you had to assume they needed to go into this either being pragmatic as hell and to at least, give it a go in the second half, or start on fire, and I thought they were sleeping for the most, for that first 20 minutes. Just Fulham looked they were first to every single loose ball. It was wild. Like I didn't look at the stats when it came to like distance covered. I imagine Fulham maybe doubled them. Just it looked like Tielemans, Madison, all of them were standing still compared to like Harrison, to the kind of shift that Harrison Reed was doing, and Polina without the ball.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Polina, we've been talking about him all year, how good he's been. And he's definitely a key part to Fulham's success for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see. I think we kind of are. I mean, we don't like necessarily like Fulham or dislike them, but we always kind of like a little bit of
But
a
Jeremy
of an
hates
underdog story. Jeremy hates him, but I like Marco Silva. I think he's been doing a really good job.
really has. Yeah.
And like we talked about Mitrovic, we thought he would be, he is a key part to the team, but we thought if he went out, that Fulham would struggle to score, and other guys have stepped up. I mean, like Willian has, I think, 5 goals and 4 assists. You just mentioned Carney, so other people have been able to step up. And Mitrovic's absence, and that's been a key part of their success as well. And I think that comes down to Marco Silva just being a good coach. I think.
Yeah, I mean they also lost Tim Ream, last week, and
Mhm.
in steps
Yeah,
Diop Diop and Tosin, and yeah,
or doesn't.
I
Yeah.
mean they gave up a couple late to make this look like Leicester had a a few more goals than maybe they should have. I mean, they did kind of edge it a little bit with, like I said, with XG. Leicester did have five big chances, and two missed. Leno was had asked to work a little bit. So there was that worth saying as well. But I agree with the job that Silva's done has been unreal. When
Yeah,
you
he's been
factor
great.
in how Fulham were a promoted team last season,
Mhm.
and as they didn't bring in a ton of like really big chancers. I mean, it might have been Paulinho, might have been like the biggest one. Yeah, they brought in I would think William. I think maybe signed him on a free. That's turned out to be amazing business,
Mhm. Oh, absolutely.
considering that. Um,
Mhm.
and to keep the focus on Fulham, I do want to talk. I mean, it's impossible. Obviously, I mentioned Harrison Reed and Paulinho, but the job that Carlos Vinicius has done. When you mentioned with Mitrovic kind of being out, he's gotten a chance to have a run of games. In the beginning, it seemed Silva was trying like Bobby Reed in the middle, and that didn't
Mhm.
really work out at all. And he was trying Dan James, and they actually beat Everton that way. But in has stepped Vinicius. He's still young. I remember him being at Spurs and scoring like a tap in goal and doing the Mbappe celebration. But
Oh, yeah, that's
he
right.
he looked really good versus Liverpool. Man, they didn't score. But he forced he caused Liverpool's back line some fits and forced Allison in some really good saves. So I mean, he's not just doing it versus Leicester. He's doing it versus Liverpool. He scored a really good goal versus City, and maybe he almost caused a PK. If you remember that week. So with Mitrovic like being out, it's really cool to see his development and improve.
Yeah, and I think it's really great of you too to point out that yeah, some of these goals have been in big games too, and I mean like scoring goals in big games, it's hard to do. Like some people like Holland make it look easy, but it's hard to do. And he's had some big goals and big games for him, and he's been clutch.
And with Leicester, there was a lot of talk about Sorenchu being back because he had been missed. He'd missed a lot of the season under Rodgers. Something I kind of thought about or found out last week that I wasn't able to ask you was it seemed like they were doing that to protect his sell-on value. They were maybe trying
Mm,
to sell him to like Atletico Madrid, and then they were like, well, there's no reason doing that because Suter wasn't really working out, so they ended up playing
yeah,
him. And it seemed like Leicester were at least kind of getting some draws here and there. But versus Everton, Iverson had to make 7 saves. So, I mean, the back line really wasn't good last week, and we saw they were really poor again this week. But I thought that also helps with there was no support for the back line, either on the wings or in midfield. And so I think that was an issue. And then I kind of mentioned it as well. Vardy was all alone. And I think it was a real shame that Iheanacho got injured versus Leeds a couple weeks ago. Because I thought he was maybe starting to kind of help a little bit with that.
yeah,
And so other than I don't know what Dean Smith can necessarily do other than I wouldn't play Dennis Pratt or whatever or Madison on the wing. To keep Madison as your 10, that's fine. Give him like Tede or Daka to at least play off of. Where at least
yeah.
it's not just Vardy trying to stretch back lines by himself, but yeah, it's looking harder and harder to make a case for Leicester. I mean, what do you think of them hiring Dean Smith? Because I don't know if I've gotten your take on that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was kind of torn on it a little bit.
Mm.
I thought maybe I don't know, maybe they should stay with Rodgers. I don't know, man. It's a tough call. I understand why they did it because obviously they're in big trouble. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. For me, it's probably a little bit too little, too late. Like I don't know how much Dean Smith can really do in this short amount of time. I mean they had a little bit of a upturn in form with back-to-back draws. They got 2 points, so maybe it worked. I don't know. I mean, I just feel maybe. I mean, they drew Leeds and Everton, so I feel like maybe if they had Rodgers, maybe one of those is a win, maybe, and you know 3 points is better than the two draws they got, but. I don't know. I think it's just too little, too late. You can't really do that much in training if you're Dean Smith. I mean, you only have like 3 weeks left.
Well,
So what can you do, really?
I mean, for the most part, I feel like they actually are healthy for the first time in a really long time. Especially Vardy, Tielemans, and Ndidi all at the same time. They even have Johnny Evans back, and it's just weird the lineup that he went with. Um, his first game versus Man City, I don't know if you remember, he actually played with a back five. It's Man City, and so that's different. But it was just weird how they. So he went super pragmatic that game, and then he's kind of just thrown it all thrown it all in the win. I mean, the last 2 games have been hell, for their keepers. So, you know, to not have any kind of protection for them has been weird to me, to say the least. I mean, the I guess the
Yeah.
positive look I can say is the team's going to need a facelift, regardless if they go down or not, because a lot of these players are out
Yeah.
of contract. They've run down. Tielemans, I think, is the obvious one, but it's a number of these players. And yeah, Dean Smith has had success in the championship to bring them up. So I don't know if they were actually looking at this as a long term thing. But
Ooh,
that
that'd be
is
interesting.
that is weird. But I mean, they do have Liverpool and Newcastle, and when we get to the Newcastle game, Fabian Schär and Botman have started to struggle when any kind of people running at them with pace. We saw this with Ollie Watkins, and we saw this with Arsenal. So maybe Vardy can get behind either Van Dijk or get behind Newcastle's high line. But I mean that's pretty much it. They have West Ham for the final game, and maybe the kind
Mm.
of the positive outlook if they can get something with Newcastle and City is West Ham going to have possibly a Conference League final to rest up and prepare for. I think at 37 points, West Ham's already safe.
Yeah, and they're
S
not really gonna have anything to play for in the Premier
Right.
League.
So that would maybe be something for Leicester fans to hold on to. But again, that's praying that 33 points and your goal differential is enough. And that's right now if they win that last game and Everton don't get anything else, they'd be able to get over Everton and Leeds. But that is asking a lot because Everton's running is actually really
That's a
relatively friendly after they have City, and then I think it's like Wolves and it's maybe Crystal Palace or Bournemouth.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's not an enviable position when you have to kind of rely on not only you winning, but other teams losing. Like that's when it's out of your hands, it's a lot harder.
Yep. And then let's see. I'm starting to. Oh, there's my brightness. All right, and then we'll move on to Brighton and Everton. Speaking of Everton, and this game didn't it not necessarily go the way we were expecting. Not just like Everton winning, but Everton just kind of exploding to win 5-1. Also, it was surprising because Brighton had just come off scoring 6 versus Wolves. Being all of a sudden finding the scoring boots, beating Man United in kind of a last minute fashion with a PK by Alexis McAllister. Brighton actually had the way the scheduling was working. They controlled maybe who was going to get into Champions League, and this one
Mhm.
definitely knocked them down a little bit. I mean, the goals from Decore came in the first like 30 seconds, and then
Mhm.
Decore got a second, and then Jason Steele with an own goal caused by McNeil. We'll get to McNeil. McNeil was spectacular. And then McNeil gets a fourth, and then Alexis McAllister gets kind of a weird goal that just banks off him. I think Matoma was trying to get a shot, it banked off the post, and then McNeil
Mhm.
again, and the fifth one maybe was the best goal of the entire. It didn't really matter, but just individually wise, I mean, this was a rocket shot by Dwight McNeil. And the only thing I can think of is I wondered last week. I have egg on my face. I would have asked you. Uh, well, I was just kind of wondering to myself, had Everton actually improved under Dyche?
Mhm.
Because he got to Calvin Lewin back, and Calvin Lewin back has changed a little bit how their entire attack looks. I mean, he's responsible for at least 3 or 4 of these goals by either a clever touch in build up to kind of drag a defender out of position, or he sometimes he's the one that people are trying to square a ball to in the box, and it's leaving open other guys to make runs in, which we saw for a couple of these goals as well. But no, I can't necessarily say that because he finally did what I was wondering about as well because Yerry Mina's been back on the bench for a number of these games, and he'd been playing Michael Keane instead. Michael Keane looked awful, I thought, versus Leicester, and Mina was back, and then Patterson was back at right back, and so you don't want to necessarily say they maybe benefited by Seamus Coleman getting hurt last week because he was a captain as well. But Patterson did a job on Matoma that really only I think Wan-Bissaka has done. I mean, Patterson was incredible this game as well. So maybe it's combined with Leicester or Everton maybe having the strongest 11 possible. Finally, everyone is fit. But the way that they did work under Dyche was a masterclass. So credit to him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just looking at the stats, it's insane. Because if you didn't know the score and you just looked at it, you'd be like, wow. I would probably say Brighton won 5-1. I mean, they had 78% possession. They had 741 passes to 221,
Yep.
and they had 15 corners to Everton's one. So I mean, it's just kind of crazy. But again, credit to Deitch. He knew how they wanted to play. If they played organized defense and they could counterattack, it doesn't matter how much possession you have. It doesn't matter that you only had 22% possession and you were 65% pass accuracy on 221 passes. Because you scored 5 goals. It's crazy. It was a crazy game.
And it was maybe a little naivete or naive.
Naivety.
No,
Yeah.
there we go.
Naivety. Yeah.
By De Zerbi, with the kind of lineup that he went with, because uh, he basically played Dennis Undav to basically be a second attacker, and I think he was just kind of expecting Everton's just going to sit back, and we are going to have, like you said, 80% of the ball in their final third. Brighton had a lot of possession, but it wasn't necessarily in the final third until the second half. When he
Mm.
made other changes, the Indus Undev was not able to get into the game at all. Welbeck was struggling to get into the game, and the interesting thing, another was he did Pascal Gross at right back again, and we saw Mauricio Caicedo at right back versus Man United versus Rashford, and that was shockingly enough. Caicedo looked like he was Camavinga. Caicedo did a job on Rashford that we hadn't really seen, just a spectacular
Mhm.
job. And it's looking back, hindsight, 2020 or whatever. Caicedo maybe should have been played to kind of prevent some of Dwight McNeil's fun because he destroyed Pascal Gross, who's not a right back by himself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 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 That experiment did not work.
And it just seemed
That's safe to say.
like Everton wanted to kind of just stay kind of compact a little bit in the middle, but when the ball ever got out wide, when it got to either Brunette or Matoma, they were immediately pressed, immediately kind of put under pressure, and it seemed anytime that was basically what Everton were trying to do, trying to get the ball on the wings, and then that was when they were kind of running at them and trying to get some turnovers, and the way that they were breaking was wild. Um, I mean, I do want to go over a couple of the goals because Calvert-Lewin doesn't necessarily score any of these, but again, he has a role that I want to highlight. So they get the first goal in the first minute. It's a clever flick by Calvert-Lewin, but this comes from Brighton kind of being sloppy. So Matomic tries to like one time a ball past Patterson. Patterson blocks it. So this shows like Patterson's maybe ready for this, and then Arobi gets on the ball and immediately plays a direct ball to Calvert-Lewin, who kind of turns and goes past Dunk, and then Calvert-Lewin drives the ball and then squares it to Decoy. So Calvert-Lewin gets an assist here. But it's a poor giveaway by Matoma that where this happens, and it's like the first like minute in the game, maybe 30 seconds. Matoma maybe could have done a little bit better here. He did something similar for Spurs. I remember that gave away a second goal in that game, which they ended up losing. Um,
Yeah.
and then they really the first Everton did start more and more of the bright sides. Calvert Lewin then forced a couple Brighton two center backs to have yellow cards after the first like 20 minutes, and then McNeil forced a really good big block on Webster to even keep this from scoring a second one, and then they do get the second one from Decore. And again, it's Everton's kind of win the ball off Brighton. I think it's Decore that actually helps win the ball off. And then the problem here was Casado and Estupiñán both do well at sprint back and recover, but both get suckered in by covering guys in the middle. Estupiñán is in the right spot, but he runs to try to stop Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin is kind of in the middle, and he's trying to double up on him. And what that does is that leaves open the entire channel for Decore, and then Dwight McNeil does a really good job to pick him out. It's still a lot for Decore to do. This is not an easy finish, and it's just kind of a volley one-time hit, and it's a spectacular goal. Um,
Always amazing. Yeah, when you talked about like the quality of goals too that Everton scored. And for them to score five, I mean, it's taken them 5 or 6 games at times this season just to score that many, and they do it in one game. It was a big win and a clutch win, and to come out. Brighton's been playing really well. It's not like Brighton have been, slipping. They've been playing really well also, and it was hard to stop them at the moment. And they stopped them. They bashed them. I mean, it was great to see this kind of fight back from Everton. They've been struggling all year. They've been struggling to score too. They've had some injuries, but yeah, it was good to see.
Well, not just they have injuries. It's just you see how important Calvert Lewin can be, and if Calvert Lewin did not have his injury issues, this guy would be recruited or be scouted a lot more than he is. I don't even think anyone is. I haven't seen his name mentioned for any kind of move. But I mean, just because versus Leicester, Everton had something like 24 shots that game, which they had not. they had not done the entire season, and like
Mhm.
all the focus is on Calvert Lewin. It's opening things up for others. But another they get the third goal with Calvert Lewin kind of being in the box, and I think McNeil is trying to cross this to Calvert Lewin. But it happens with Dwight McNeil kind of slipping by a couple Brighton players, getting to the byline, and then he squares the ball, and it just banks off Will Still. Uh, but uh, the, I think what you said is right. Brighton weren't necessarily great. Okay, obviously when you look at the scoreline, that makes sense. But
Mhm.
this really Everton were fantastic, and just Brighton kind of ran into a buzzsaw a little bit here, and then Will Still also had to make a big save before halftime to even keep this from being 4-0. And yeah, I do think it just Dyche kind of shocked De Zerbi a little bit with the way that they were breaking out and being so direct. They weren't sitting in a block like maybe we would have expected. And Welbeck and Undev weren't able to get into the game. But what happened in the second half was we saw four changes, and this completely changed things. Ferguson came in and he was dropping more into pockets. He was linking up more, and Siso came in, and unlike Brunette or unlike Undev, he was getting the ball on the turn and making people miss, which made
Mhm.
things a lot harder. Marsh came on for Brunette, and Marsh was being a little bit more direct and creating some chances too. Colwell, I think, came on for Webster because Webster was struggling and on a yellow card. And then for
Mhm.
that next like 10, 15 minutes, it felt like if Brighton were going to get maybe one goal, they maybe could have found a way back into the game. There was a big save by Pickford to deny a Ferguson header, and then I think Yerry Mina's head maybe stopped a Sully Marsh shot, and then McAllister had a couple headers here and there. One hit the bar, and then one had a Pickford save, and it felt like Brighton really were on the ascendancy. And they get a corner kick, and then out of nowhere, it's a really sloppy pass by Solly Marsh. He gives the ball away again, and unfortunately, he tries to sprint back to make up for his mistake, and it looks like he does his hamstring in. So, when they play Arsenal, they're not going to have Solly Marsh. And then it's just Iwobi kind of doing a nice pass to McNeil, but McNeil still has to do a lot to work here. And he's clever. He slips past Dunk sliding by him. He keeps his composure, like he easily could have tried an early shot here, and then he's able to kind of do a nice little feint to get past Will Steele, and then puts it away in an empty net. And again, we just this kind of composure, we just hadn't seen from any of these Everton players. And again, McNeil was stunning in this game. Um,
Yeah, he was amazing. Yeah, it was good to see that too, because he's struggled as well, and I mean, we remember him at like Burnley, so yeah, it was just good to see. He's a fun player when he's playing well.
And we mentioned the McAllister goal. It kind of comes from nothing, and then maybe the chance for Brighton, the last chance for Brighton to kind of get into it is Matoma did have a volley, I think, off a corner kick, and then Colwell, it kind of just hits his head. He's not really he's trying to steer it on goal, but he doesn't really know much about it. And then in the basically in the final minutes, McNeil gets Everton's fifth goal. It's a fantastic through ball by Onana, who wasn't even he didn't see many minutes, but you see the quality that he maybe possesses. But still,
Absolutely.
McNeil kind of it looks like he maybe had a square ball even, but he decided to take on the center back, freeze him, and then just one touch with his left foot, and then bangs it into the net past Steele from the left side. And this was a rocket shot. So McNeil was maybe feeling himself a little bit this game.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he was on fire, and why not? I mean, he was playing well. You might as well, take him on yourself and try to score a rocket.
But I think a lot of this was on Brighton kind of being a little naive. I think that's the right word because a number of these goals was when Stupien was a little bit out of possession. It seemed like Brighton did not necessarily respect Everton's threat on the wings because Stupien was kind of cutting in middle. It seemed he was kind of doing a little bit more of the inverted stuff that we've seen from other teams. And then Pascal Gross just isn't a right back by trade. And anytime McNeil was just kind of eating his lunch. Anytime he was able to kind of square him 1v1. And when that was happening, the two center backs, this is the reason why both were on yellow cards, is they had to do a lot of recovery work by themselves, who aren't necessarily that quick for pace themselves. And Brighton were playing with a high line. So it was Brighton weren't necessarily ready for this. And maybe a reason they weren't ready for this is they played each other on January 3rd, and it was 1-0 Brighton. At one of like Lampard's like final games, and just what a difference a couple of months can make. Because
Yeah,
or what a difference a week can make because it was. just a couple weeks or just a Saturday ago, Brighton was doing this to Wolves. Making Wolves' defense look insane. So yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, crazy.
And you kind of mentioned the stats. I mean, Brighton did have 5 big chances and 4 missed. They also hit the woodwork 3 times. But Pickford was monster to at least in the second half. He wasn't woodworked a lot in the first half, but this maybe could have been a 3-3 kind of game. And you're right. The Brighton absolutely passed Everton around, and they weren't
Yeah.
necessarily bad passing. I mean, the percentage was good, but anytime it didn't come off. 89% isn't 100%. And pretty much, anytime there was a misplaced touch, Everton were able to break with Decore. It was interesting to also see James Garner and Idrissa Gueye. Basically, they didn't offer a lot going forward, but they were protection in the middle. They forced Brighton to go out wide. They were really good at holding.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so we mentioned McNeil, Decore. I mean, anyone you want to kind of highlight for Everton, or do you think we kind of covered it?
I think Decore is my guy for this game, and he's been
Yeah.
crucial in the midfield. And if they when they play like Decore and Onana in midfield, they got like two huge guys in there. So like they do have some things they can build on in the future if they're in the Premier League, which it's looking pretty good right now. But so they do have stuff they can build on. They'll obviously have the Dominic Calvert-Lewin decision. Can we keep him? Is he going to be healthy? I mean, next year if they're in the Prem and he's healthy, I mean, who knows? You would expect them to be comfortably mid-table if they can have a whole season with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Then you have Decore, Onana. Maybe you can get McNeil firing too, and then Pickford. I think they'll be in pretty good shape if they can, you know, keep people healthy and stay in the Prem. Next year, they might be a team that is going to be a lot harder to win against.
I mean, it's definitely the only thing that's concerning a little bit to me is the passing numbers. I think it's like 150, with like maybe 60-ish percent. Like it's fine to play this way when you're going against a team like Brighton that is going to want the ball themselves. So you're kind of forcing them to act, and you're kind of reacting, and they can do this versus Man City coming up. But the games that they're going to have to win, so Wolves and Bournemouth. It's maybe not gonna be necessarily as easy. They might have to take the game a little bit to them, but, again, with someone like Calvert-Lewin, I look at Bournemouth, the way they defend crosses in the air. Calvert-Lewin, I think, will have a hat trick that game if he's able to play. Maybe I'll kind of just
Yeah.
kind of throw that as a prediction. But,
Yeah.
uh, the fact that Yuri Mina and Patterson are back, I think Everton have messed up, or Dice, not playing Patterson, earlier. Patterson's been back from injury. He was fantastic on someone like Matoma, which just we haven't really seen all season. I think Matoma's had the most successful take-ons all year, and he just was not able to really get past Patterson at all. Patterson was forcing him to cut inside towards goal to make Matoma, take away the cross threat, and Matoma wasn't able to necessarily have the final shot or final ball cutting inside. It looked like he was more comfortable trying to take someone down the byline. Um,
Mhm.
and then I think it was fitting that McNeil and Ed got this kind of performance from Dice, because you mentioned the Burnley performance, and I think I was one of those that kind of was overlooked or was kind of side eyed Dice coming in, but we didn't see this kind of performance from McNeil under Lampard, and maybe there's a thing with a certain familiarity or a comfort that maybe Dice is kind of instilled into him, because he looked fantastic this game. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, hopefully they can kind of continue him playing this well to end the season, and that'd be a nice little boost in the run and to try to stay in the Prem.
because I think he's on maybe 8 or 9 goals. And that's for Everton. I think that's fantastic, especially for a wide player. So if he can get double digits, that has actually been pretty good business for them, because he was one of their transfers. And
Mhm.
and then, for Brighton, I think maybe a positive, it's on the back of the Man United thing. So maybe there was some of that, especially the way to win it so late. Evan Ferguson back and healthy, I think is good for them, but maybe not necessarily good for Arsenal. Uh, but
Yeah.
you're looking at the way that they were so vulnerable on fullback, especially out of possession. Now everyone's talked about Estupiñan. Estupiñan's had a great season, but this is the first time where he was a little bit he was caught at a little bit. And maybe that's the way that Arsenal like to play. They like
Yeah.
giving
Absolutely.
Saka and then Martinelli the ball. So maybe that's something they can look at. Um,
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
but
You just use that speed on them 1v1. I don't know. I mean, I expect Brighton to be pretty angry about this game, and they're probably going to play tough. But yeah, that'll be a good matchup to look forward to.
and another thing that was interesting was it seems it was like the first. I think we saw this for Brentford, even though they had like 20, 30 shots that game. But it's a little bit different when you don't fall for their pressing traps. So like they want you to run at them because that forces you to kind of leave the space that you're at. So there was something that Lampard said in January that like their build up from the back isn't just done to keep possession, but it's done to basically draw people upfield to create a big space behind to exploit. And Everton were not falling for that at all. Garner and Idrissa Gueye were basically almost like standing in cement. They're like, no, you got to get through us in the middle. They're attacking a little bit on the fullback side, on the wing side. They were trying to press, but it didn't seem like as long as Brighton didn't have that first goal, Everton didn't have to chase. And I think that was maybe it was maybe the first time where we saw Brighton struggle a little bit with that. Like it was a little bit different when Everton Ferguson came in because he was running closer to the ball. He was helping them to create a little bit more of an advantage where they were able to actually bypass, the two holding midfielders and advance the ball forward a little bit more because
Yeah,
Welbeck and Undev weren't doing that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, true.
and then they do have Arsenal next, and we did see Sully Marsh having to go off, so you're probably not going to expect him. But to be honest, in that second half, when Enciso came on and the kind of stuff that he was doing on the right wing spot, it could maybe make them a little bit more dangerous because Sully Marsh, you know what he's going to do. He's a little bit like Anthony. He wants to just cut it onto his left foot. Where I guess who would be that would be the left back for Arsenal. I guess it would
Left
be
back,
I guess it would be
Zinchenko
Zinchenko. Yeah, he might have to
or Tierney,
he might have a
maybe.
harder game with HCSO. So we'll have to see that. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, that'd be interesting because Arteta could play Tierney. He's a little bit more defensive, and Zinchenko's kind of struggled defensively at Newcastle and was subbed
yeah, they
off,
subbed him
in the
off.
65th minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And then we move on to Southampton and Nottingham Forest. This one ends 4-3, and the game just I was kind of expecting this to be a dud a little bit. Just kind of
Me
not
too.
not to be one of those like snobs, but just the way that Nottingham Forest has been going about so many of these games. And maybe the surprise was for the first time in like I'm just a guy we call it perspectives from the sideline or from the bench. Um, so I'm not necessarily anyone like important or anything. But I've personally just so many times I've looked at a Nottingham roster and I've questioned it immediately before even the game happened, and then the game turned out to be almost what I was expecting. And this time I finally saw a little bit. I could understand what Steve Cooper was doing because he gave Brennan Johnson on the wing, and Gibbs White. He allowed him a little bit of freedom, but he gave them an outlet in Elwani. So many times we've seen Brennan Johnson kind of playing all by himself, with no help behind him. We also saw three midfielders, which helped out a little bit. So Danilo was able to have a little bit more freedom going forward than necessarily being a holder, being defensive. And so we saw 4-3-3. It was compact, and but the way that they were able to break out was good. And just so many times, how many times did we see Gibbs White either tried it at striker by like a false nine by himself, or tried? Sometimes it would be Jesse Lingard with like Gibbs White, almost like double tens with like no striker played with. It was
Yeah,
goofy. So many of these times, and you finally saw Steve Cooper maybe get this right a little bit. We didn't see John Joe Shelby in midfield, not being able to run. We saw a midfield that actually had some legs. They are healthy a little bit. They have Niakate back, who has really helped. And they have Lodi back, and they had to miss Aurier, and they're missing Nico Williams already. So they might have struggled a little bit at the fullback spot. But for the most part, this is maybe as healthy and strong as they've been. So maybe they kind of played a role into it too.
yeah, maybe. And we've been talking about Owoni, and he stepped up with a big brace. So it's nice to like you mentioned, not have to rely on Johnson the whole time. But yeah, this was a crazy game. I was not expecting, this high scoring of an affair. And this was another team in Southampton where you saw a little bit of a fight back. I mean, it was 4-2, and then obviously Ward Prowse had like a 96-minute PK. So
Mhm.
it makes it look a little better. But again, you have a team that's bottom, and they're at least fighting hard. I mean, trying everything they can, and they're not a team that necessarily scores either. So for them to score three and just kind of make it a game It's good to at least see these teams, because this is a team in Southampton that's bottom of the table. They look relegated, but at least they're still fighting.
And everything I said about Forrest kind of getting healthy at the right time. I mean, Southampton did have Che Adams back, but yeah, and Che Adams looked rusty. He had a chance to actually score in the first like 10 minutes, and had a really bad touch. Um, but they lost Belakachip in this game, and they haven't had Livermento at left back the entire year. They've been forced to Kyle Walker Peters from either the right spot or the left back spot. They tried Maitland Niles in this game at left back, and he had a mar of a game.
Mhm.
And they've been missing Peru as well. And so this was it's all been a negative for Southampton, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like you said. This was you saw a glimpse of what they can maybe offer. I mean, Alcaraz has definitely tried to carry them as much as possible, but they haven't really had any kind of a focal point in striker to rely on. And this team is so crazy young. I mean, obviously, you imagine someone's going to poach a couple of these guys. So. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
Lavia, especially, but probably Ward-Prowse. Ward-Prowse will probably get a look at someone.
Yeah, I think he's too good to be in the championship. Yeah, he'll definitely, and his set pieces and his free kick goals, he'll definitely be in the Prem. I would think. I mean, you would hope so because you know just watching some of his goals are really fun. I still want those free kick goals in the Premier League next year.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I've seen big names thrown up. I don't think he's a Champions League player. To be honest, I don't necessarily think he
Yeah,
does enough in open play. But he's not necessarily. He's not a statue. He can move, and he does have a decent passing range to him as well. You just don't necessarily see it show up in numbers or in product. But I look at someone like Spurs, or even I'll even throw out Brentford. Someone that you kind of need a little midfield help
yeah,
to someone to at least when they get the ball to their feet, they don't necessarily lose it.
yeah,
I think that is valuable. And so yeah,
yeah, definitely.
I agree with you. And obviously, you get maybe a couple goals from the free kicks, and his corner delivery is spectacular as well. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he's such a good dead ball special. Let's see, he's got 8 goals and 3 assists. So I mean, that's responsible for a decent amount of goals for Southampton.
hmm And obviously, maybe being in a different team, he wouldn't have to be relied on as much. So maybe we'd see him flourish a little bit better as well.
Yeah,
I mean, to touch on some of these goals, I know Danilo scores one and helps assist one for the Aroni second. It's two really good Aroni finishes. So I mean, I've
mhm.
been wondering why we haven't seen Dennis maybe play it a little bit more. I know they also have Sam Surich, and Cooper's actually stuck out with Aroni, and he's been rewarded with that. But we've also seen him stick out with Danilo the last couple of weeks. I think Danilo's like 3 games in the last 3 games, and he's been rewarded with that as well.
Yeah, Danilo's been really good, really good.
And then another. So I mentioned the three of four of Nottingham Forest's players. I got to talk about Gibbs White, because Gibbs White, he was expensive to bring in. I think like 40 million. People were wondering about that because he was like a bench player. I think at Wolves. But he's maybe proving his worth because let's see, he's on 9 big chances created. He had 3 key passes in this game. He's on 5 goals and 7 assists. But 3 goals and two for the last 3 games. 5 and 7. If he can, if I end up getting maybe 10 assists, in with 10 assists, maybe get another goal. So that would be 6 and 10. Do you know what that would replicate, or who had similar numbers or the exact same numbers 2 years ago?
2 years ago, I have no idea.
Played for Aston Villa, and now plays for someone else.
Oh, Grealish.
Yeah. So he's he's a
Wow,
little knockoff version of Grealish. And he's
interesting.
still young. And we don't maybe with a different team, we'd maybe see him flourish a little bit as well because it's not like there's been a lot of supply to him. But Gibbs White has really, for a breakout season, he's been a little bit under the radar. He's been really good.
Yeah, he has been good too. Yeah, good shout.
Um, and for the negatives, it wasn't necessarily stellar because it's not just they conceded 3 goals. They looked lost at times when they had the ball. I think it was funny how It almost looks like they like, maybe being a chaser a little bit because, when Southampton were like, "Okay, no, we're actually, the team that's struggling now. We're gonna sit back and kinda force you play around a little bit," and they couldn't do it, and they kept giving the ball away, and that actually is what, led to a couple of these goals as well. And then,
Yeah.
Southampton, I think it's just been, it's a team of just collectives or individuals as opposed to a collective. But the point I wanted to get at, which I kind of highlighted here, was I think if you forget the scoreline, the team playing the better football, I think, lost this game, and lost overall. You look at the because Forest can defend decently. Well, the at least, they have Navas, to help them a little bit.
Yeah.
They're one of the worst defensive records in the league because they can't really defend anything in the air either. But Southampton had 19 shots, to Forest's 9, 4 on target, versus 5, and that's kind of the problem. But 11 corner kicks to 2 in Southampton's favor, which kind of showed you where the game was going at. And then Southampton created 5 big chances and missed 2. But Forest only 200 and so, some passing, which has kind of been accurate the entire year. They just haven't been able to really keep the ball. Southampton with
Mhm.
444. I mean, they're chasing a little bit, but it seemed like they were the team with that was a little bit better in possession, and I thought was playing a little bit better coming in. And it is going to
Yeah.
be unfortunate to see them leave because um,
Mm.
they're kind of maybe, I guess, a needle in London. It's kind of like, London have so many clubs, and I guess Southampton, Nottingham Forest is a little bit different, I guess, in that respect. But I think as far as just, a style and a team that has played pretty good football, considering the size of it for the last 8 whatever years, yes, 7 at least. I think I'm going to
Mm.
be actually upset or disappointed to see Southampton go. So I'll hope they'll be able to
Yeah.
find a way to stay back up because I've enjoyed them. Or at least I enjoyed them under
Yeah.
Hasenhüttl.
Yeah. I mean, they have like players that I really have enjoyed watching for sure. But yeah, just to your point about passing, the accuracy numbers too, 83% pass accuracy for Southampton, and only 69% for Nottingham Forest. So yeah, they played Southampton played pretty well. It's 19 shots and 5 on target isn't the best, but because especially when Nottingham scores 4 goals on four shots on target.
Yeah, I don't know if you were here for the show when Forest played Liverpool. I forget if that was last week or 2 weeks, but Nottingham Forest had 78 passing, successful passes completed.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. We did. I think I was on for that. Yeah, because that's
just
eye popping stat.
And it was just like long throw-ins where yeah, anyways, at least they were a little bit better this game, so that's worth saying. But
Yeah,
you mentioned James Ward-Prowse. I'm gonna look at Roman Lavia and Kyle Walker-Peters as definitely people that someone should probably try to snatch up. And I mean, Sulemana,
yeah,
I think
definitely, definitely.
Sulemana at 20 maybe wouldn't do too bad to be in the championship, but something I brought up last weekend is they also have a player that just helped Burnley get promoted. I think he had 17 goals and like seven assists. He had a stellar season in the championship, and I think he's still
Hmm.
only 23 years old in Nathan Tella. So
Hmm.
you imagine if they don't sell him, he'll maybe help them out, and maybe we'll see Southampton bounce back up because we've been seeing that lately. Um, you know,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Look at those parachute payments too from the EPL. So
and then that is enough of the Monday stuff. We'll move on to the title race. See how we're doing for time. 3, 4 an hour isn't terrible. Okay, not bad. All right. Well, we'll actually get relatively quickly because after these other 3 games, we'll be pretty good. But Man City did beat Leeds 2-1. First 2 goals from Gundogan, and then Rodrigo got something, in like the 83rd minute or 85th minute, made things a little bit interesting. But the reason why it was interesting is because Man City had a chance to go 3-0, and Erling Haaland apparently he's not just big in height; he's got a big heart. Because he
eh,
he kinda gave it to Gundogan to kinda get his first hat trick. Gundogan was player of the game, even before this, and, unfortunate that Gundogan, missed it, but, that at least gave us something to talk about because it made Pep melt down
yeah,
in real
Pep was
life.
furious.
Yeah, and maybe
Yeah,
maybe you see
yeah, Pep
why,
was
because
furious.
Gundogan I this is just kind of a personal thing. I've always hated short run-ups, especially when you're angled, when you're not, like,
Hmm.
running face up, because you could tell where he was gonna go. I've never liked a short run-up, but that's just personal opinion. But, yeah, he
Yeah, the
hits
only short rap I like is Tony.
he hits it
Tony has a
most.
short rap.
Well, he like
He
has one.
blasts it, but it's still like
He like has
yeah,
one.
one step
He
right.
like has one step. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
but
but also it was interesting. You could see Pep like screaming for Holland to take this PK,
even
and
before it,
then
yeah.
obviously when yeah, even before, and when he doesn't, yeah, he just melts down. And I mean, it's kind of like this is why even though they still win, but Leeds scores a goal and just makes it really interesting. And obviously, if Holland takes a PK and buries it, they score 3-1. It's still over 2-1. Just a little bit, finished the last 5 to 10 minutes with a little extra nerves. Make Pep a little more bald, I guess, lose a little bit more hair,
Oh
but
no.
yeah, it was just funny to see.
I mean, what did you think of Sam Allardyce's first game in action? I mean, he kind of mentioned it at the end how he was like, "Well, we beat them in the second half," and I was like, "I don't think that's how you're going to stay up."
Yeah, yeah, the numbers too are just really bad. They're even worse than I. Forest had 19% possession and 200 passes at 59% accuracy. But yeah, I mean, only losing 2-1 isn't the worst thing. I kind of question Robles. It was his first Premier League start since like 2017.
That was surprising. Yeah.
Which is yeah, that's a long time. Yeah, so that was definitely surprising. Messier has conceded a lot of goals, but he also saves. He makes a lot of saves, but
Well, I thought
yeah, I don't know. I
it
guess
was
it's not
surprising, but I
terrible.
thought I
Two
thought
one isn't
Robles was
terrible.
good. I mean, he also, to be honest, I think if Gunnigan's shot is on target, I think he saves it because he guessed right
Yeah,
and he had a good outstretched hand, and he actually I thought he made a couple good saves on Holland.
yeah,
It was surprising to see it though. I think you're right to
it was
call that out.
surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird because he hadn't played in such a long time. But yeah, he wasn't bad. He wasn't bad at all. Um, but yeah, like and Bamford being back, he should help. You would think. I mean, he's still putting together games, so he's still a little rusty, I would say. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't terrible. That we've been on their defense all year, and they only conceded two to City, so it's not. Yeah, it's not bad. I think it is something that Big Sam, can kind of build off of because he'll be thinking if we take one more chance, maybe we have a point. So we were actually we were playing with them, but looking at the numbers, those have to improve. I mean, you can't have 20% possession and 200 passes to you know City's 750. They're just chasing the ball around the whole game, and you're gonna get tired. And now it's not the time to get leggy when you need results and you're at the back end of the season and the bottom of the table basically. You don't want to get tired, so
And that's
I will see, but not
and
too
that
bad. 2-1
and
isn't
and
bad.
that's one of the risks when it comes to like making a quick manager change because he wants to like he maybe does a different training, and he wants to like kind of see what the fitness levels are and whatnot, and that can maybe take some legs out of you as well. I
Yeah,
mean, I thought it was interesting to see Robin Koch and Strucka benched for Weber and Christensen. And in the beginning, Christensen was kind of tried at left back. So he played Ailing and Christensen together. Ailing again had a really poor game. But Straka came on in the second half, and within seconds or within a minute, brought down Foden. So you maybe saw why Straka was benched in the first place. So I don't know if we'll see him again. I do want to go over a little bit on how City at least got the first goal and how they got a couple chances before that, because you saw a theme and you saw basically the way that Leeds set up was destined to fail essentially. So there's in the 15th minute there's a chance for Alvarez, and so Jack Harrison is just crazy lazy, and he allows Kevin De Bruyne to run past him, and then he points to the fullback Firpo to take care of Kevin De Bruyne, and so that leaves open Mahrez completely on the wing, and so who gets the ball free? He gets the ball free, cuts inside, and then tries to cross, and it doesn't come off, but he gets the ball to or uh, he doesn't come off, but the rebound falls to Kevin De Bruyne, who basically runs to the free wing, and then because Harrison and Firpo then Harrison and Firpo have followed Mahrez when he had cut inside. And so Gunnigan finds Kevin De Bruyne completely wide open, no one near him, and then Kevin De Bruyne crosses it in and finds Alvarez's foot, and he just can't keep the shot down. And then there was a chance for Holland a couple minutes later, and it's a really good through ball by Rico Lewis. Voice is a good save. This is a real by Rubeles. But again, you see lead shape is bad because it's really easy for Lewis to receive the ball in the middle of the field and then feed a run to Holland making a run behind. McKennie and Roca were like the holding midfielders, and unlike what we saw versus Everton, with Garner and Idrissa Gueye actually being a little bit defense shield in front of the back four, McKennie and Roca were stretched, and it was just really easy for someone like Rico Lewis to get into a little pocket and then look up and immediately play a through ball in the middle to Holland, making a run behind the back line. And yeah, it was poor by Leeds here, and a wide open. And I think either Holland either missed a shot or at least forced a save. But to get to the goal, it's almost the exact same passing pattern that happened for that Alvarez chance. So
Mhm.
it's easy for City to get the ball in the middle third and then switch it out wide, and this time it's Mahrez completely unmarked by Firpo. Firpo then tries to recover and he allows Mahrez to get by him. But because Firpo is out of position, he's got to run, and then Mahrez he can't really change his direction. And then Mahrez, what he does is he squares the ball to Gundogan, who's completely unmarked as well. And it's a good finish by Gunnigan, but Leeds make this easy by simply choosing to ball watch and not mark people in their own penalty area. They've got like 10 people in the penalty area when this ball happens, but no one's marking
Yeah,
no one's marking Gunnigan. So
yeah. It's just more terrible defending, which it's plagued them all year. We've talked about how summer window came and went, January window came and went, and they still didn't really do a lot to fix the back line besides like Vober in January. And we thought, if they get relegated, it's going to be because the back four is not good. And yeah, it's looking like we're right. Although, pretty easy to look at the back four and be like, that's why they're going to be bad, in fairness. But yeah, they didn't do anything about it,
if they
in the transfer windows, really, besides Vober.
if they find a way to stay up, it'll be amazing because it'll be two years in a row where they will have found a way to stay up, having the worst goals conceded record, and it won't even be close. Like they were able to skin of their teeth last season because I think they had Burnley by a point, but they had the worst goal differential last season as well. So
Yeah.
you're right, to not really change any of that was wild. I mean, a couple of these were just it's not just defending, just kind of staying back in a box. You need to put pressure when someone has the ball. The especially with someone like City. City's too good at creating spaces where maybe it shouldn't be, or too easy to find teammates making runs. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit after the goal, Holland gets another chance and he drags a shot wide. But he's set up by De Bruyne, and this is a fantastic. This was almost move of the weekend. So this is a pass from Gunnigan over the top, and then Kevin De Bruyne gets the ball in the box and kind of does like a little back heel flick. But again, no one puts pressure on Gunnigan when he gets the ball, so he's able to look up and have the time to see Kevin De Bruyne making a run behind the back line. Everyone's so focused on Holland. This is what Arsenal kind of had to deal with Kevin De Bruyne making a clever
Yeah.
run, and this almost came off, and Holland just kind of hits it wide. But this was I don't know if you remember this moment. This was almost like goal of the month, or this was a really good goal, almost a really good goal. Um, and then we'll get to the second one with Gunnigan, and it's deja vu for the first goal. So Gunnigan gets the ball again. There's no Leeds player anywhere near him to put pressure on him. He has all the time to look up and sees no one's bothering to mark Rico Lewis either, which is weird. Those are the two guys that City is playing in the middle. Where are Forshaw, McKennie, or Roca? I didn't understand what Forshaw was supposed to do in this game. But Lewis gets the
Yeah.
ball
Yeah.
to
Me neither.
Holland, and Holland collects it and drives a bit outside with the ball. He sees Mahrez completely unmarked again on the wing, and then Mahrez gets the ball. Mahrez then freezes Firpo, and then finds Gunnigan completely unmarked again. Roca is marking no one here. Forshaw and McKennie are double marking Alvarez. Rico Lewis is also being marked by one of the center backs. Holland isn't in the picture though, so there's really no, because Holland has made that run and he's offsides a little bit. So there's no reason for two of these Leeds players to be double marking someone, especially like Rico Lewis is like my size, maybe even a little bit smaller. He's not necessarily going to be a threat. So it's just weird to see Gunnigan completely free on top of the box again, and it's another really good finish by him. But again, it's easy
Mhm.
for him to have a finish because there's no one even able to close down on him.
Yeah. True. You can't give him time and space because he'll make you pay.
And maybe the only negative to City's game was Ake had to be subbed off. So Walker came on and Akanji was moved to the other fullback spot. And Ake has missed a couple of games here. We probably won't be able to go for Real Madrid today. But that really was it. Obviously, the missed PK kind of brought things into the equation a little bit as well. I mean, Holland hit the post in the second half. He maybe had three chances to have a hat trick. It's a fantastic ball by Kevin De Bruyne. No, it's a Kevin De Bruyne-esque ball by Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis was amazing in this game. We hadn't seen him a little bit since like February. And
Yeah.
given how young he is and the kind of options that Pep has, but Rico Lewis in that little because he wasn't a fullback, he was actually played in midfield. And he can maybe be a liability. You can maybe out physical him a little bit still, but he's so gifted on the ball with it. When he does have time with it, he doesn't shy from trying to feed balls into pockets of space ahead of field. And he was able to do that. So
Yeah, and we've kind of forgotten about him a little bit because he hasn't played as much as he had been. But yeah, Pep still finding use for all his players, and yeah, he's a good player. He has his liabilities. I think that's why we see kind of Pep pick and choose when to play him. But
mhm.
he also has a lot of upside.
I mean, the upside was being able to rest Rodri in this game. So you got to got
Mhm.
him rest.
Yeah,
The only thing I was thinking of is so you're able to rest Rodri. The guy that would have gone into my mind was Calvin Phillips versus old Leeds side. And Calvin Phillips still wasn't able to get game time. I thought that was kind of Calvin Phillips didn't maybe make the best move career wise there, though. Yeah,
yeah,
maybe next year he'll feature in. The
yeah.
stats were not kind to Leeds. 18 and 6 on target for City, 4 big missed chances. So this could have been a lot worse. Only 4 shots for Leeds and 2 on target. 0.23 xG. Possession, like you said, 81% to 19, and City almost had 800 passing, which is not exaggeration. With 91% accuracy, Leeds weren't even like they didn't have a pressing structure to like win the ball back. Leeds just were there. It was a weird game.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, 2-1, but the numbers for Leeds were just terrible.
And another thing too, we saw Jack Grealish arrested, so we saw Foden tried instead. Mahrez on the other wing. But yeah, I think the guy to touch on it is well, Kevin De Bruyne had 5 key passes, which is out real. Yeah, maybe the
Yeah,
man of the match was Gunnigan because he able to to get the goals from midfield. I think helped out because Leeds were playing everyone in the backs in the penalty box to make it really tight. So that's what we're saying as well. But Rico Lewis had 120 touches and 95% pass completion. Playing in midfield, which is supposed to be kind of the hardest area to play. He was 4 for 4 in ground duels as well, and he only lost possession 7 times. For being as young as he is, that was unreal. Now again,
that is pretty
Leeds
good.
kind of
Yeah,
played a role into being as bad as they were to allow no pressure in the middle of the field. But I mean, it might have been a training game for Rico Lewis, but he made it, or he made it look a great training game. He was very good. Um,
yeah, he really was. Yeah.
I mean, what do you maybe expect to see? Um, well, I didn't get your takes a little bit on what you thought with City and Arsenal. Do you want to kind of go into that?
Oh, I mean, I just think I thought City were just much better, just all over, all around. I thought maybe, I mean, it's hard to say, but I thought maybe Kivior should have started over Holding, and we saw that.
Yeah.
I think we saw that a game too late. We saw that change a game too late. But I get why Arteta didn't do it because Kivior really didn't play well the last time he featured in that Europa League game.
Yep. True.
Um, yeah, but they're just Arsenal's just not quite as good as City. I don't think. I mean, and the head-to-head record this season proves it. I don't think they've beaten them head-to-head. They're close. They're really close. But I don't. I just City's firing on all cylinders. I don't really see them slipping up, unless maybe someone gets hurt. I mean, because they are playing in the Champions League, so it's more games. But yeah, I just don't see them slipping up. I just see it more as Arsenal are close. They're really close, but they need to probably just bolster their lineup this summer. We saw how injuries, to key players, Saliba definitely has hurt them.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, just top to bottom, starters to the bench, City are better than Arsenal right now.
I've
It's
seen
close, but
I've seen you guys are linked to some interesting names. Now you guys tried to get Casado, in January, so I think that name's always going to be there. I think you guys are
mhm,
linked to Lavia of Southampton, who might be available on the
really,
cheap. But I've also randomly seen a lot of people saying that Arsenal is leading for Declan Rice. What do you think about him?
yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. That would be great. That would be good cover. Really good cover for Partey. Maybe it'd be Partey and Rice, maybe too. And
Do you
I
think
don't know what
do you
becomes
think Rice could
Shaka,
maybe
but
do a role where that Shaka has? Maybe be a little
yeah,
bit more advanced.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's what they would do. And then maybe Shaq would be someone that could come on, off the bench.
Mhm.
I don't know, but that would certainly be helpful, especially because Partey sometimes gets hurt or needs days off. So
I think that
you
yeah.
know
I think
you
if you
have just more
guys
depth.
I think if you guys went that way, that would be really smart. That would be a really shrewd move.
Yeah,
It'd probably be expensive, but
definitely.
yeah, because you're getting cover,
Yeah,
like you
be
said,
expensive.
cover for Partey. Yeah.
Mhm. And maybe a right midfielder, a wide midfielder for
W-
just backup or competition for Saka.
What do you think about a right back? Where maybe try Ben White,
A
kind of,
real one.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I think
or
White has
stick with Tomiyasu.
shown he's been good. Tomiyasu, yeah. I think White's been pretty good. I think he's shown how good he can be. He's gotten a
Hmm.
couple goals and assists. So he's still learning the position, but I think Arteta will stick with White. Um, the key though, yeah, Tomiyasu, is he going to be healthy when he comes back? I think he's going to be back in the beginning of June, so he'll make it to all the preseason and stuff. So I don't know, we'll see. But White definitely needs competition at right back just to get the best out of him. And then I don't know, Tierney might be leaving too at left back, so they might need another left back to compete with Zinchenko. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting summer, but it always is. I mean, it's always interesting with the transfers.
I mean, I was gonna say, I think Matt Niles is still on loan, and we saw him get a number of games at fullback for Southampton, though he wasn't necessarily good in
Mhm.
this last game. So, I mean, maybe he could be an
Yeah.
option, or maybe you try to sell him to try
He
to
was trying to sell him
bring someone
and get
in.
money, yeah.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I think Reece Nelson too might be gone. Try to
Inter-
sell him.
interesting.
So,
I don't know if I
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I would agree with that, but I mean,
I think
obviously
he wants
he
to.
he really wants to get more playing time. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, the thing that's just noticing is so many times it makes sense where there's going to be so much focus on Holland. You forget that Kevin De Bruyne, when he wants to, he can make these clever runs in behind as well. Even with his legs, and he offers a threat. Sometimes when Holland drops deep, this was happening with Arsenal a lot. Holland was almost a decoy at times, and they were looking to try Kevin De Bruyne over the top, and that's what really hurt Arsenal a little bit. And that happened because Holding was so terrified of Holland getting behind him, where if you had something a little bit more
Mhm.
stable, you guys would have
It's
helped
true.
out.
That's definitely true.
Another thing was it was Thomas Partey by himself in the middle, where that would have been a time. It looked like Shaka was getting caught up, getting baited to press high. Instead, he was just kind of going over the top and beating Arsenal's press, where maybe
Yeah.
Shaka should have played next to Partey in the middle a little bit more. But yeah, it's still. If Arsenal do kind of go on, I think it'll be more the drop point to Southampton, necessarily the City loss. But um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. And then let's see for Leeds, maybe the positive is they didn't get destroyed with goal differential. I don't really know. I'm
Yeah.
to be honest, like it's not just the defense. The defense is absolutely atrocious. I keep getting surprised that Jack Harrison is getting picked. You've got Somerville and Nanto as options. I don't think the Jack Harris experiment has worked out. Now a lot of this has
Yeah.
been Harrison playing without Patrick Bamford. Patrick Bamford is finally a striker able to offer them something, but it's just Patrick Bamford by himself, and he's not necessarily. He doesn't seem like he's physically enough to hold off. To be an outlet by himself to hold on to the ball and at least help Leeds, keep it for a couple of passes here and there. It was just, I think Bamford needs to be played with someone. Play with Rodrigo,
Mm.
or I don't know, maybe try Rudder and Patrick Bamford together. But and another problem is, I don't think McKinney's worked out for them at all.
Mm.
Especially playing in a holding position, he's not comfortable with it. He did have a chance at the very end when he was on the ball to do something with it, and instead I think he hit it right to a City player, and that with the chance, unfortunately. But I look at McKennie, and I feel like if you played him, you could find a way to play him, the way that Newcastle play Joe Willock, or Villa play Jacob Ramsey as someone to kind of
Mhm.
play, kind of a little bit more on the wing side to have a little bit more freedom when they get the ball to kind of run with it a little bit more than necessarily being asked to being holding guy and possession in the middle. I just don't think that suits him. So obviously they've been missing Tyler Adams, so I think that's the reason why they've been trying
Yeah.
to fit McKinney
Big
there, but
time.
it hasn't worked out.
No. Yeah, they missed Tyler Adams big time.
Yep. And I mean, let's see. They do have new. Oh, all Leeds have I think is Newcastle next. I mean, do you see anything that they can get something out of that game?
No, I don't think so. Not playing, with 20% possession and 200 passes. I don't think so. And Newcastle are going to be mad about that Arsenal game too. So I don't know. It's not looking good. It's not looking good for Leeds at all.
And speaking of Arsenal and Newcastle, we'll move on to this game. And to be honest, I think that the scoreline was misleading. It's only 2-0. This could have been anything. especially
Mm.
considering
Yeah.
that Newcastle hit the post in the first like 30 seconds and
Mhm.
had a PK given to them. I want to say in the first like 5 minutes. I mean, Newcastle started off on fire. But
It really did.
before we get to this, Arsenal were going on a bit of a rough stretch, after the City game, and then they had Chelsea in the midweek. No one really was knowing what to expect there, and something happened in the midweek. Do you kind of want to talk about that?
Oh, well, yeah, it was a huge, huge win. Changed things up a little bit. Kiavor finally got his start, and he was great, and he
Yeah,
was fantastic in this Newcastle game too. And then Jorginho came in for Partey. Partey got a little bit of a rest, and Jorginho's been good, and
he has
he
been
was
good.
man of the match in this Newcastle game. He was amazing. He got the assist. His passing numbers were fantastic. He was recycling possession a lot. So yeah, it's been two big calls by Arteta, and they've paid off. Again, maybe Kievor maybe could have played in that City game. I think that's when the change might have should have been made. Maybe it would have been interesting to see how that would have affected the game. I think they probably still would have lost, but maybe a little less. But yeah, it's been good. Kievor has been amazing, and maybe they don't have to sign a center back because they got this guy. He's kind of a hidden gem.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It is just a shame. And looking back, I was one of the people that thought maybe it's a blessing that Arsenal don't have to deal with Europa anymore. Maybe it's a blessing Arsenal don't have to deal with the FA Cup anymore. But the flip side of that was those would have been times to actually give Kiwar or someone like that a little bit more minutes, maybe Reece Nelson a little bit more minutes. And it's
Yeah,
looking like that maybe would have benefited you guys. So that
absolutely.
that's I mean, obviously, the flip side of that was you lost Saliba because of Europa. But I
Yeah.
I think it was Odegaard just kind of showing up, because the kind of goals he got, and he showed up in this game as well. He's
Hmm.
I've been asking for him to do a little bit more. He's got 15 goals, which kind of
Yeah.
surprised me as well. Non-penalty goals.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he's been great. 3 goals in the last 2 games too.
I've been wanting him to show me a little bit more to kind of be basically the Kevin De Bruyne that the Man City is, and for the last few games he has shown. Now you can discount the City performance. He even showed this for Southampton with a really
Mhm.
big goal. So he's looking to finally he has faith in that left foot, and it's a wand of it. And the way he's able to
Yeah.
strike the ball from outside the box, this is so big because now that teams know when he gets the ball outside the box, you've got to respect it. That's going to open up spaces for others as well.
Yeah, he's a good passer. He's got the 15 goals, but he's also got 8 assists in the Premier League. So, yeah, if you're kind of backing off of him, he can shoot, and if you're trying to, maybe close down the shot, he can do slip in a through ball. So he's got it all, and he was captain at a young age, and in his first club in Norway, I think he was 15. So
He
he's also got that in his locker. He's
he
a good leader.
he glides on the ball too. He's also really good. When Jorginho was getting the ball, him and Jorginho were almost like changing a little bit, and they both recognized where the spaces were, and just the clever one touches to kind of get past Newcastle, pressing them. Newcastle were trying to do what maybe Southampton was doing and West Ham were doing, and
Yeah.
it was different because I think Jorginho did help with this because for the last couple of games it seemed Arsenal had struggled with teams pressing them. And, Newcastle did start off kind of, brightly, but after the first, like, 10 minutes or so, Arsenal really did control the game.
Yeah, yeah. The first 10 minutes, yeah, were scary. They had to survive. But yeah, after that they settled down and they started to play their game, and they still kind of managed a slightly, a pretty early goal, 14 minutes, to kind of give them more confidence, I think. And they certainly started to play better even after that goal. And you kind of felt like they were really trying to find that second goal to kind of kill things off. They knew that maybe 1-0 wasn't going to be enough, so they didn't sit back on their laurels. They actually went for it and tried to kill the game off.
I mean, this game could have been anything, 'cause, it's not just Murphy hits the post basically, like I said, in the first 20 minutes. It's also funny how Joe Willock in the beginning was kind of having fun a little bit with Ben White, and Willock, I think a former Arsenal player, that was kind of, kind of fitting a little bit in that as well.
Yeah.
Ishak had a shot that I think was deflected, for a corner kick, and then, I mean, what did you think of the PK decision that was overturned? Because I think it was right, but I haven't. There's a lot of, at least the conversation I've seen is, it was an easy call that it totally bounced off his thigh. I'm not necessarily
Yeah.
sure it's easy to see that.
Yeah.
I feel well. I
Well,
I
not with the naked eye.
I've been confused. Yeah, because it seems like
Yeah,
it could have been both.
with it naked eye, it'd be impossible.
And the other thing to say is, whether or not it's the right call or not, it was close. Just a couple of inches, it hits the arm, and that probably is
Yeah.
given. I mean, this was so close. That's how different this maybe could have changed.
Yeah, that
Just margins.
would have changed the game. Yeah, it would have changed the game too, and yeah, I mean, to be able to make the call in real time, pretty impossible. But this is one of the areas I think where VAR,
Helps
it
out.
actually helped.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure, because then you're able to see that it did take a deflection off his knee first, and he really couldn't do anything about it hitting his hand after. If it did, I don't know. It's still hard to tell, but.
And he
And
actually wasn't.
even the announcers were like, "It's a handball," and then they saw VAR review, and they're like, "Oh yeah, definitely."
It's
So
actually incredible
it worked.
body control, because he doesn't move his arm at all, which is worth saying as well. Because
Mm,
we'll get to the Man United game. Jesse Lingard got away with doing a little chicken leg,
yeah.
in that game. You didn't see that in this. Uh, But yeah, so they get the Arsenal get the first goal with Odegaard, and then a couple chances here, for Martinelli and first Martinelli, and then Saka, and everything was great here. The kind of play that they were doing. I mean, Zinchenko had a really good through ball. Odegaard had a really good through ball, and the only issue was both Saka and Martinelli hit it right at Pope. Pope made a
Yeah.
good save, but it was just right at him. And then Willock kind of did the same thing where he forced. He had another. I think Ishak kind of played him the ball into the box, and for all three of these, if any of them tries to pick a corner, I think it goes in. Willock kind of hit the ball right at Ramsdale, but and then Odegaard at the very end almost had another big chance where I think he forced another big save by Pope. He did like a clever run into the box, got the ball I think on like a give and go, and it's a great save, but he hit it right at Pope. So that was
Mhm.
maybe the again, just a different kind of finishing. This game could have easily ended, I don't know, 4-4. This was a bonkers game. Like the 2-0
Yeah.
didn't complement it. I thought
Yeah. And big saves by both keepers too to keep
Ramsdale
they're both teams netting them at
Ramsdale had
points.
a. You mentioned Jorginho was man of the match. I think maybe he was rewarded with it. I think it was Ramsdale.
Yeah.
I think Ramsdale kept you guys in, especially for the second half, because
Yeah.
Ishak had a header just to kind of start the game. I think this one maybe just banked off the post, but then there was a corner kick sent in. I think it's Fabian Schär. He had some ball to Ramsdale, but I think it's like kind of right at him. But
Yeah.
he has a couple of these where Ramsdale just he had a dive on I think a header that was close range. That was unreal. Um, and then we'll get to the second goal is really unlucky for Fabian Schär. So he almost scored,
Yeah.
and then you saw the other. Football can be cruel. I mean, the thing that's wild here is Martinelli gets the ball inside his own end, so he carries it like I don't know 70 yards all the way upfield. Trippier is out of possession because. Or out of the picture because he's made an overlap run and Joe Linton misplays a pass and loses possession. And then Martinelli is able to run up the field, freezes Botman, gets by him on the bot line. Botman hasn't necessarily had the best month, and then he crosses it and it banks off Fabian Schär. But the weird thing is there's really not anyone for Martinelli to aim anything at. So it's just really unlucky for Fabian Schär because Gabriel Jesus or no one was really in the box, so they didn't really have numbers. This is the only way that Arsenal were maybe going to score, or maybe
Yeah.
Martinelli's trying to get a corner kick, by
Yeah.
by
Actually, it might
banking it
be.
off Pope. But it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I did kind of feel bad for Shar because if he didn't get a shout that he had time, like it's in a dangerous area. So yeah, it is kind of unfortunate. He hasn't been playing that well. He's kind of beat up in this game too. But yeah, it was nice. It was nice as an Arsenal fan to see them go and kill the game off. And 2-0 is a completely different story than 1-0 with 20 minutes to go.
And then there were a couple. I think it was maybe relevant here because one of the leading stories before the Southampton game was Arsenal having 2-0 leads. They did it versus West Ham, did it versus Liverpool, and this one felt different. It did feel like they were a little bit more in control of the game, and they were able to play it out. So I don't know if that was that was just kind of a one-off, or maybe maybe the change of personnel kind of helped with that because another thing that was noticeable was you didn't see really any bad giveaways. Obviously, like Kirar wasn't necessarily fantastic on the ball, but it seemed a holding was not only an issue. I think when you guys when he was trying to make recovery runs, I thought he was poor on the ball.
Mm.
So I think just in general, Arsenal were better. Now they didn't really show up in the passing numbers per se because Arsenal did have low passing numbers. Um,
Yeah, they actually did. It was weird.
but I didn't see them giving the ball away nearly as much. And when they did, it wasn't in bad areas.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, they gave it up like high up the field, so it wouldn't hurt you at least.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think of Gabriel Jesus kind of returning to the squad? I wanted to ask you this a little bit after the Man City game because I think in this game it maybe helped because when he drops deep, Newcastle don't really Botman or whatever don't really want to follow him, and it allows Martinelli and Saka to kind of make runs from the wings up the middle, which it seems that they like doing. But the only negative is when that happens, those two guys basically have to create a lot of this on their own. There's no
That's true.
real help there. Um, and this Jesus was able to help with control a little bit, but it's just sometimes to me it's still a project.
Hmm.
Sometimes it works. I don't know. That's just kind of
Yeah, that's true.
something I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, he's always going to work hard at least, and if he doesn't get goals, he will get assists.
Because if Trossard would have played instead, it probably would have been the same thing. To be
Hmm.
fair, the only real striker you have, I guess, is Nkadia.
Yeah, that's the only guy. Yeah. I don't know. I've been liking him though because he does work hard, and he
Mhm.
does. If he doesn't score, he provides assist, or he's working hard, and he might not get an assist, but he's got the ball before the assist, that kind of thing. So I like him. I mean, and Kedge is just not good enough to be the only guy either, and we kind of saw that.
And we mentioned you mentioned Jorginho being played over Party, and to be honest, I think it may be a bit of a masterclass by Otata, and it's egg on my face because I mean after the Liverpool game, I did like spoke like 5 minutes about I thought he was maybe arguably player of the season. And he's had a really weird stretch of games where he's struggled a little bit on the ball. I don't know if there's some outside influence or what. But just the
Mm,
way that Jorginho, he's a weird player because he struggled a little bit at Chelsea, but Chelsea weren't necessarily asking him to do this. Basically, to get the ball from deep. He plays near the center backs. But he's just really good at moving the ball quickly out of his feet. It doesn't stick to him, and
yeah,
he's not really pressable. So you try to press to him, that forces that makes when you try to press him, you leave a space behind you. And Jorginho tries to look to that, and he's really good at getting the ball quickly to feet. But he's also really good at getting the ball forward. He's first in passes completed, but first and also in final passes. So
mm, dang.
I think it helped, playing with him, and it seemed he had a pretty good connection with Odegaard. And Xhaka was funny in this game as well to kind of mention the other midfielder because it seemed anytime he got contact, he was going down and really annoying Newcastle fans. Um,
Yeah, that was true. That was definitely true.
and so we mentioned Odegaard with the 15 non-penalty goals for midfielder. That really is exceptional. Yeah, I kind of I kept saying I wanted to see a little bit more, and you're right. 3 goals in 2 games, maybe even more because he had a goal for Southampton as well. Um, and with Newcastle, I think you saw what they are essentially. You saw they can run at teams and really go at you. They remind me a lot of I think I've said this before of an early Klopp Liverpool team, where it seems their engine is full and they go. They don't really have a way to play. To have a backup plan when that doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily come off. I think
that's
they were
true.
missing Shang Longstaff in this game, is worth saying. But the thing that was wild is they didn't have someone like Jorginho. Bruno Guimaraes wasn't able to influence the game like Jorginho was. And another thing too is when Bruno did get into dangerous areas, he wasn't able to offer what Odegaard offered. There was a couple of chances when he tried a shot and he either mishit it or hit it out of bounds. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so it does feel like they're missing one more person in midfield that can offer a little bit more passing control. Other than that, though, they still look really good, and for only being a year project into this is still scary. Um,
Yeah, 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 definitely. Because they've been really good, and with the money they're gonna have, they're just gonna get stronger and stronger of a squad. So yeah, we're gonna have to look out for them. They're gonna be, you would think, even better than this year, next year, and then their form at St. James's Park is insane too. I mean, I think the Arsenal game was their first loss at home this season, wasn't it? I
Liverpool
think.
Liverpool beat them because of the Pope red card, if you remember.
Oh, right.
But
So they've
but
only lost 2 games at home, I
but
think?
what's
That's
crazy
crazy.
is playing down a man. They beat Liverpool in XG. I mean, I remember that game being like Alisson had to be player of the game. Uh,
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I do remember that.
I mean,
Ugh.
the interesting thing was how went with Jacob Murphy over Almiron. We saw Almiron a little bit in the second half, but there were a couple chances where uh, Newcastle weren't necessarily the best finishing. I forget what the stats was, but they didn't have they had a pretty decent number of chances, 12. Only and they did have 5 at least on target, but I feel like both teams actually had a couple big chances missed. So you saw that as well, but it just seemed maybe you needed a little bit more quality, a little bit in the final third. Maybe Almiron would have been a little more beneficial. It was interesting to see Ishak and Wilson play together start.
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh,
so
yeah.
yeah, and Ishak,
And you've been calling for that too.
Ishak looked good. He created a couple real big chances. Just either Jacob Murphy or Willock, just kind of one hit the post and one kind of hit one right at Pope. I mean, right at
Mhm.
Ramsdale.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then up next, so you got Arsenal up next with Brighton, which will be fun for the weekend. No rest for Arsenal, and I think Newcastle will
Another
get
good game.
Newcastle will get Sam Allardyce. We'll see if that works, or if he loses that one by a big number, he gets back to Sam Allardyce. Or
Yeah.
goes back to Big Sam. I don't know. Um,
Big Sam, yeah.
and and then we'll move on to another game that kind of bring up the top 4 race in West Ham and Man United. This one only ends 1-0 with a goal from Ben Rama, but it comes from a De Gea spill. And one thing I actually brought up last week, Rex, was after Aston Villa had played Man United, I kind of wondered to myself. I wanted to ask you this question: it almost felt like if Man United were doing scouting, or if I was like a Man United scouter or football director, I was looking at maybe Imran Martinez as someone I would try to bring in, for the next transfer window. I was kind of thinking that way because I was thinking,
Mm,
David De Gea is great at making his saves and whatnot. He has issues, and we saw them in this
yeah.
game. It wasn't just the spill. He was bad on the ball as well. He was giving it away really cheaply, giving West Ham some opportunities that way. There were a couple of times when West Ham had a corner kick and De Gea was really weak trying to punch the ball. West Ham got a second goal and they got it chopped off because there was like a weak foul by Antonio,
That's right.
which De Gea got lucky on. And I think maybe I was kind of just speculating a little bit, but I think maybe that is where where Man United should look at in the summer. Now, they're going to be linked to strikers, we know, but I think they should maybe look at keeper.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because this was directly, 3 points because of De Gea's error. And I mean, it was through bodies, so I think he had trouble seeing it is the goal, which is why he
I think that's
didn't get a
fair.
big enough hand to it.
It looks like
But yeah, I mean, he still should have
Yeah,
kept it out.
and Benrahma because it's so far out, because
Yeah, it's so far
it's
out.
not like this is close to the
Yeah.
penalty box. But I
Mhm.
agree with you. It looks like Benrahma does a really nice job to like curve this around. I think Lindelof, so he maybe does see this thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, didn't it go through someone's legs too, I
but
thought, but
I think the problem is more in general. You need to, to play to play that position these days. You can't be a liability when the ball's at your feet. So I don't
yeah, definitely.
the save and the mistake, I think, highlights the other areas. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Amy Martinez. I mean, even
Could
someone
go for Raya.
like Berlino. Well, Jeremy doesn't want to hear that, but
Right.
I think Raya's
Yeah, I
name.
don't wanna yeah.
I think Raya's name is going to be mentioned in some of these.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I think he's gonna be linked to a couple clubs, I think,
he's
unfortunately for
made the most
Brentford.
saves the entire year.
Yeah,
And
he's been great.
Brentford had been nowhere near this relegation spot. We've been praising their back line. We've been praising Ben Mee and Pennick, but at the same time, teams have been getting a lot of shots on Brentford, and it's because of Raya. Raya's been amazing, and
Yeah, he
Leno,
really has been.
and Leno's number 2 in that category, which is kind of surprising. You have like
Oh,
Meslier like number 3, which makes sense because Leeds. But Leno's made a
'cause
number
they
of
stink.
saves to save Fulham.
Mm,
And then, for Man United, it was just not the best week because of what happened with Brighton. We did see a bit of a lineup change. We saw Bruno at left wing. We saw Wanghorst tried in the middle. And then we saw Rashford, try to track her. One thing that keeps noticing a little bit is it doesn't seem he doesn't understand how to necessarily fit Weghorst in. He doesn't really have options. Ten Hag doesn't really know what to do with his wing options. Sometimes it's Rashford on the left, sometimes Rashford in the middle. Anthony is kind of hit and miss as well. I actually think he looked better when he was played in the middle. He was getting a couple of chances because when he cuts onto his left foot, he's a little bit more dangerous than necessarily try it on the right because you know what he's going to do. So that hasn't necessarily worked out. But I was thinking, a guy that keeps kind of going into my mind was one. Martial probably should have started this game because when he came on, they looked a little bit better. But two is, man, if they really missed Garnacho, because
Yeah.
he offered so much pace on the wing. He was able to get Rashford some rest, but he's just his directness. He was a big player. He wasn't necessarily starting a lot of games, but he was just someone to kind of change the shape, change the game a little bit. And they've even for as young as he is, they've really missed him.
Yeah, they really have. Yeah, it's unfortunate they got hurt, but he was playing well too. He was playing really well.
And, the back line issues, it's Lindelof and Shaw now that seems to be kind of the main back line. I was a bit surprised we didn't actually see Maguire versus Brighton, at least, come on as a sub because Brighton were trying to, they were getting a couple free kicks here and there, and it seemed, Maguire at least could have, headed something away. Maybe he would have been better than Shaw in that
Yeah.
respect. But, Brighton,
Yeah.
Man United, have so many issues, injuries at the back. Martinez is out for the season. We don't know about Varane. I mean, they're doing a decent job that way. I mean, again, the West Ham should have won this comfortably. It is only one goal, and it is the De Gea spill, but I think Thomas Suchek scored a goal that was chopped off for like a foot offsides.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
wasn't just it wasn't just the De Gea spill. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't just that. Yeah, they should have scored for sure.
and it's not all doom for Man United. They still control their top four fate. I think this is about West Ham because it's Moyes beating a club I don't think he's beaten a single time
Yeah.
since he's
In the Premier
managed
League.
since he's managed them.
Yep.
And he's not going to say it, but I think 37 points is safety. Because
I
that
think so.
forces that you got to get two wins and a draw, and even that won't be enough because West Ham have a better goal differential than all those teams behind them.
Yeah.
So
A lot different. Yeah, like 20 better, 20 goals better. So I think they're safe too. Yeah. Big performance, big win. And yeah, like Moyes somehow manages to get big results when he needs it, when West Ham needed to stay alive and to get out of the relegation zone. It's wild.
And there's something about sticking with your manager.
Yeah.
Maybe Everton are going to get away with it by bringing Daishen. I don't think Leeds are going to get away with it bringing, Big Sam out of nowhere in. But you look at now, Bournemouth maybe isn't the best example because Bournemouth fired their guy after 3 games into the season.
Yeah.
But after that, they stuck with Gary O'Neill the entire way through. Um, Nottingham Forest have stuck with Cooper the entire way through, and West Ham have stuck with their guy the entire way through. And if
Yeah.
those are the three that stay up, I think that'll be a story that we should that'll be a story that we should focus on and try to keep in the back of my mind or heads for next season and seasons going forward.
Yeah, because oftentimes, owners are very quick to pull the trigger on firing managers. So yeah, I mean, it sometimes it doesn't pay off, and you need to stay with the guy that's been doing things for you so far. And yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision to fire a manager, but yeah, sometimes it's the right decision, and a lot of times it's not. It's hard to make that call, especially when you see people because like just more. It's just a couple weeks or months ago. It was like, yeah, this guy probably should be fired, and now it's like, oh, he's ended the season on a decent run, on a much better run, and he's got Antonio and Bowen kind of up to speed now of what we're used to seeing him like last year. But yeah, I mean, hanging on to him, it's a good call, and I like to see the owner's faith in a manager be rewarded too by the
Yeah,
team staying up in the Premier League.
because I'm not going to necessarily say Leicester should have stuck on to Rogers, or maybe they should have let go of him a little bit earlier. Because I remember they were linked to like Sean Dyche back in like January, which would have been interesting.
I would have
But
been
it
for
was
sure.
probably too late to let him go when they did. Bringing Smith in again, if that's a long term project, I understand. But if not, yeah, that was maybe the wrong call. And then I mean, Leeds were kind of not Leeds, Southampton. I think South if they had stuck it out with Hasenhüttl, maybe, uh, maybe, it been his last hurrah, maybe fired him, after
Mm.
in the summer. I think Southampton would have had enough to stay up. Um,
Yeah. It would have been interesting to see.
uh,
Who knows? But yeah, maybe.
but, I mean, to focus on West Ham, the interesting I saw was, Man United were trying to West Ham still weren't necessarily great on the ball themselves, but one thing that especially passing, but one thing that was happening was Paqueta was really good at winning 50-50 balls. Paqueta is starting to he hasn't necessarily shown up when it comes to, um, stats where, in product, we'll say. But what
Mm.
he does have composure on the ball. You see why he's gotten a lot of games for Brazil. He's quite good at being physical, and using his body to shield the ball. And he was winning some duels, and he was able to advance the ball upfield regardless of people being on his back. Declan Rice showing really good touches to get out of pressure, and Antonio was doing an amazing job just kind of manhandling Lindelof when he was like on his back shoulder to kind of get a ball kind of kicked up long and to kind of hold it down and to keep it. He was doing what Patrick Bamford wasn't able to do. So I mean, because sometimes Jared Bowen was kind of the only outlet. You needed just to go long for someone like Antonio to kind of win a 50-50, and he was doing it. He was doing a really good job with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the passing numbers, it's 263 for West Ham with 76%. That's kind of similar to what we've seen with a couple of these other teams at the bottom. So you see why they're at the bottom. They aren't just able to keep the ball enough. They're 35% possession. And Fabianski had to make 4 saves. I mean, this could have Man United did kind of pack it on them a little bit towards the end when Martial came on, and they tried Wanghorst. Wanghorst did not necessarily work. Martial came on, and offered them a little bit something different. Sancho came on for Anthony as well. And Man United did give it a go in that final 10 minutes, but it was just too little, too late.
Yeah, too little, too late. Absolutely. Yeah. But it was good to see them give it a little go. But yeah, like why not like play like that a little earlier? Give yourself a better chance.
And West Ham were in the game with Man City, and then Nathan Ake had to get I guess it was like a free kick that Nathan Ake won a header on, and then Holland had a really good like second goal. So I think they ended up losing. They lost a little bit more than what the score maybe should have been. But it was
Yeah.
Declan Rice didn't play that game, so you're able to get a rested Declan Rice for this game, and now that they have 37 points, you imagine that they're safe. They also have leads head to head as well. So if they have to get a result, they control their fate. They have a little room here to take Conference League a little bit more seriously. I was a little bit more critical of that. I was wondering, well, why are you taking this so seriously when you guys are in a relegation fight? Well,
Yeah, true.
now they're in a semis. I think they're playing a Dutch team that is actually having a good season. They were over Ajax, uh, but they probably have a chance to make a final and have a chance to win some silverware with this team. And
Crazy. Yeah.
it might be the last time they have Declan Rice or a Bowen. Maybe I don't know what they're going to do with David Moyes, but this team has been so close over the years to getting top four. They got to the Europa semis last year, and I think they lost to it wasn't Rangers, Frankfurt. They lost to Frankfurt.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
that would be it wouldn't necessarily be like a Hollywood, kind of ending, but I think it would be what this team has deserved because they have stuck with each other for a good stretch, and, to go out with some silverware, I think would be nice.
Yeah, and like you said, they've been knocking on the door at times of top four and even getting trophies. So yeah, it would be cool to see them get a cup, get a trophy. It'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
and, yeah, especially, just kind of a way for all of them to kind of go out. And, one thing to touch on with United, or I mean it seems like they're gonna be linked to Kane no matter what. But this year especially, because, with the way that Spurs have gone, you don't really know what when we get to Spurs, I don't really know what to think of them because I don't know what their, long-term outlook is. It seems like they're maybe linked to Nagelsmann. But if I'm Harry
Yeah,
Kane, Nagelsmann's an interesting name, but he's never really done anything of note, to be honest. Now he's
yeah,
interesting,
interesting.
but does that really excite me, as far as, like, a long-term project? I don't really know.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
like that won't necessarily get you what you want.
and Man
It
United
could. It's interesting though.
Man United, it makes sense if Rashford's going to be fine being left wing spot, and you can kind of see what Kane's been able to do with Son this whole time. To me, it does make sense. Now, our buddy Alex doesn't like it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think Kane would be great for him. I think maybe the price point is an issue too, like because I think Alex might be thinking, Kane's going to cost, I don't know,
Spend it elsewhere.
hundred. Yeah, spend it elsewhere on maybe more players and maybe younger players. And you can still get like young, experienced Premier League players.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily. I mean, I think Kane would be great. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, he's very experienced in the Premier League, and you wouldn't have to worry about him selling down to a new league or anything like that. And I think he would fit well because you will have some outside service to him too. But yeah, I think the price point is an issue because you'd be better off probably getting three or four players for the price of one Harry Kane. Maybe strengthening, the center back position, the fullback position might need to be strengthened, and bringing in a striker,
I
all
agree.
for the price of one Kane, possibly. So I think that's why Alex doesn't like the move, and I'm a fan of getting three or four younger guys as well. But I still think Kane would make them much better. I think it would be a really good signing, but it just depends on how much funds they can get. Because obviously with the injuries too at center back, you can't really, Maguire might be gone. You can't really trust him. So they're definitely going to need center back reinforcements as well. And I still worry about the fullback spots for him too. So yeah,
Yeah,
they'd be better served, I think,
it's a good
finding
call. Yeah.
three or four players for the one price of Harry Kane.
Yeah, I mean, because you imagine they are going to look at least at striker. But you're right. I mean, they. I was thinking they already have that in Rashford, to be honest, and you have
They
Garnacho maybe
do.
be on the left.
And Martial maybe, yeah.
Because I don't really know what the idea is with Anthony or Sancho. That's kind of an issue. And you're right to focus on a little bit on the fullbacks, and I mentioned the keeper. I think they do need to maybe
And
look
the
at
keeper, yeah.
maybe look at the keeper.
At the very least, they need a solid backup keeper to De Gea, you would think.
And then let's see how we're doing for time. We'll move on to the final game for maybe a top four. I wouldn't have expected this a couple of weeks ago, but I can actually say this. Now watch Liverpool kind of do something with Leicester, but Liverpool and Brentford is a top four kind of game now, and it's not because of Brentford. Liverpool go on to win 1-0 thanks to a goal from Mo Salah, and this game. It doesn't necessarily look great stats wise. I mean, it was heart in the mouth for me for the final like 8 minutes because uh, it, Liverpool, I think, committed like 19 fouls. It seemed like any time Brentford were getting on the ball, they were having a free kick, and Brentford are like the most scary team in the world on set pieces. And I thought, if nothing else, there was at least something to praise because Virgil and Kanate and just everyone were really good at defending the set pieces. There wasn't really a time where Allison was really forced to struggle that way. But anytime Brentford were able to get a ball over the top, and Bremo was making Virgil van Dijk want to retire at times. He actually scored on him. Even it was just kind of a knee for being offsides. There were still some issues a little bit with this Liverpool team.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, things are looking up, and I mean, if they could qualify for top four, it would be a huge boost. They get just unlock those players that want to play in the Champions League. They get more money to buy those players. It would be huge, and where they were in the beginning of the year and a couple months ago to where they are now. Like you said, we didn't really see this late push, but yeah, it's been good, and they're getting some players back at the right time as well, getting some players healthy like, when it counts most.
Yeah, I mean it's probably the top the back line. The change I think has been moving Trent a little bit more into midfield. But that exposes you a little bit the way I talked about that last week. The way that they're kind of forced to change Robinson's role a little bit more. It's been interesting to see Curtis Jones played over Thiago. That's been out of necessity because it looks like Thiago's out for the year. But the interesting here was we didn't see Henderson this game. And it wasn't Harvey Elliott. We've seen Harvey Elliott tried in some of these games. It was almost Gakpo. Gakpo was either right central midfielder at times, but he was also kind of played a little bit more in a 10 at times when Trent was kind of pushed up. And the interesting thing about this is I really did like it. Now, it didn't necessarily show up, stats wise, but there were a number of times when Gakpo was able to get the ball and run with it, and he's actually really good with the ball at his feet. He maybe doesn't have the best pass on him, but the thing that was interesting thing here is unlike when Gakpo's kind of played as a false nine, he had Nunez running ahead of him. And there were a couple of times where Nunez was making good runs and Gakpo was trying to find him. But that was also when people were trying to mark Nunez that left Salah a little bit more open, or Jota. And so you saw there's Gakpo being the focal point with the ball. which was a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. Someone like Henderson would have tried to throw something in the air, per se. And another thing that's
Yeah.
interesting is since Jones has come into the team, um, the way that Liverpool are able to press and win the ball back is better. So there's that as well. But the problem is sometimes Robinson gets caught too out of field, and that's leaving Virgil kind of stranded to do things 1v1. I don't think he can do that anymore. And you saw Brentford enjoy some of that. So there's praise I think for both teams a little bit here, even though it didn't really show up. Brentford only had like 5 shots and maybe only one on target. But I
One on
think
target.
I think that was misleading. Brentford were close. They caused chaos the entire game, and the chaos just didn't lead to Allison having to make a saves, but it was close.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to describe it, I think. Yeah, it was a tough game for Liverpool. And Brentford play teams really well. I mean, they've got a bunch of like top four, top six wins in the last 2 years in the Premier League. So they know how to play, yeah, especially they know how to play against like bigger clubs. So yeah, it was always going to be a tough game. You'd like to see more, create more shots or at least put more of those shots on target to have a chance of winning the game. But yeah, they at least make things hard for opponents.
And I mean, one thing because Brentford actually beat Liverpool in the January window, or January fixture, and one thing that kind of noticed to me was they had Nordgaard that game. So I mean, Brentford's been
Yeah,
maybe missing him. It's just
definitely.
someone that's really good at just Brentford sometimes aren't the best passers of the ball. Nordgaard is really good at finding ways to get stuff to feet for people to maybe run onto because it looked like Tony was almost kind of the supplier. Tony wasn't really the one making runs himself. He was trying to get he was trying to find Embremo making a run. There was that was the one chance that they put the ball in the back of the net. But I do want to get over a couple of the chances that Nunez had, because there's a lot of positives and negatives to touch on. So in the 17th minute, Nunez almost connects on the ball, kind of floated in by Salah, but he mistimes the header and whiffs. Jorgensen does a decent job to kind of put him off maybe a little bit, but I mean the ball to Salah I think is accurate and it's just kind of a whiff by Nunez. But this is close. I mean this is another day. Maybe this goes in, but he's getting chances. Another thing that we're saying is he also had a miss after Trent Alexander-Arnold had a fantastic through ball over the top that he ended up trying to. Nunes, I think, is in like the 8-yard area, and he mistimes the finish or the touch, and the ball just goes out of bounds. But again, it's the run, and he's getting in positions. He's missed like 20 of these big chances. They call them. If he could just convert half of them, he's got 9 or 10 goals in the league already. That's a 20-goal striker. And if he could just work a little bit more of his composure, Liverpool have a gem here. Just it hasn't just worked out this year, but he's gonna.
Yeah,
There is an if there. So there's worth saying as well.
yeah,
And then the goal that Salah scored on, it was almost kind of a recycled goal. It just kind of came from nothing. The ball was kind of flowed into to Virgil van Dijk, who kind of headed across goal, and then Salah didn't have the best first touch, but was able to get it in with his second. And then from there, to be honest, it looked like Brentford took control of the game. Evan Toney had a free kick, and scared the post, and then Mbeumo did score, and it was just kind of chopped off. And then in the second half, it was a lot of missed chances by Liverpool. Gakpo had a missed chance here. Salah does well to kind of thread a ball to Jota. Jota then tries to square a ball to Gakpo, but this wasn't really on Gakpo, so I guess that's fair. Jota kind of
yeah.
hits it too hard, and it kind of banks off Gakpo's like thigh. And then Trent had basically a Kevin De Bruyne kind of chance outside the box and forced a really good diving save by Raya. But the big missed chance did come from Gakpo after looked like Aaron Hickey made a mess of a poor header. He was trying to like head the ball away or trying to head the ball back to Raya, and it didn't come off. And the ball bounces to Gakpo, and instead of taking a touch or maybe trying to go far post, he tries to lash at it and slices it out of bounds. If Nunes had done that, no one would have, everyone would have heard the end of it. I mean, and then towards the end, Brentford had so many free kicks. I never thought the game was going to end. So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting 11 to see Klopp go. I think maybe Diaz should be played on the left side instead. I don't know how you necessarily fit all of them together on at the same time. But yeah, that is worth saying as well. But Brentford. Brentford were better than necessarily the stats showed, 'cause Brentford were pressing the ball, and their energy and directness was giving Liverpool fits. You know, Liverpool weren't able to really control the game at all, and you see that in the low passing numbers. I mean, anything under 400 passing for Liverpool is low, and they only had, what was it, like 308, for 81%, and that's not necessarily just with Thiago missing. Now, Henderson didn't play, so maybe they would be a little bit more direct because they had Nunez, they had, Gakpo was maybe making runs instead of making a pass here and there, so maybe there was some of that instead, but in the second half, I didn't necessarily think they had control of the game as maybe they should have.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. Oh, they could have put the game to bed too.
Yeah, I mean, Diego Jota was kind of subbed off. He's probably going to be the one that has to be he's going to be the odd man out in some of this. But he had three key passes. It wasn't necessarily his fault, in my opinion, and he
Yeah.
saved Klopp's bacon versus Spurs. So
Yeah.
I don't
Absolutely.
necessarily know if I agree with that. But you got to talk about Salah. Um, so he's this goal. I think it was him 30 for the year, and he's going to have another 20 goals in the league. You imagine? I think he's like 19 or 18. And this has been considered, this is after his contract year. This is when a lot of people were kind of going at him for, being a flop this season. He just continues every single time he's been in the year or in the league. At least for Liverpool, not counting what he did with Chelsea. I think he's had 19, 20 goals. For a minimum. It's stunning what he's been
Yeah.
able to do year in and year out.
It really has been. Yeah, and he gets like, leggy too because he plays so much in it. It doesn't really affect him too much in the end run. Just boatloads of goals every season. You can rely on him.
And then with Brentford, Ivan Toney was 8 for 13 for ground duels. He was only two of four in the air. So like Kanate and Virgil were doing a decent job at least in that respect. He drew six fouls though. That was annoying. Actually Kanate was like hugging him at times. I was worried about this game because 30 minutes into the game, Tony had forced Virgil and Kanate to both have yellows. And it was just kind of thankful that didn't necessarily show up.
Yeah,
Um,
true. It could have. Yeah, because it could have.
Yeah. But to focus on Nunes, I do want to. He's missed 20 big chances. So again, the positive I mentioned, like the positive is if he can just convert half of these, and he doesn't really have the best feet. So sometimes he has heavy touches, which you see. And when he receives the ball, he obviously is brought in to be a long term project. People thought he was going to be like a Sadio Mane kind of replacement. That hasn't really shown up, and it seems they've brought in Cody Gakpo to maybe help kind of do some of that link up ability that maybe Nunez doesn't offer. But what he does offer is he can be explosive. He's got legs for days to kind of annoy center backs. He can be a threat in the air as well. But as Salah ages, Salah's going to probably want to drop deep to look for the ball. So you're gonna maybe have more of a reliant on someone like Nunez because Kajota sometimes tries to drop for the ball as well. Gakpo has been dropping for the ball. You don't have someone to make a run in behind to kind of keep that back line back. And so that's what Nunez can offer. And maybe next year we'll see a little bit more of that. Maybe with someone with a better midfield will be able to supply him a little bit better. There's been a lot of talks out of nowhere that they're seriously linked to Alexis McAllister of
Hmm.
Brighton, and
Be
if they
interesting for
they get
sure.
that, a lot of my takes have necessarily given are gonna age a little bit differently because I've said, oh, they need to sign three or four players, and basically midfield. McAllister is two or three players in one. Now I still think you need to find someone to help with Fabinho because I think his legs have showed up. I don't think it's going to be Henderson.
Hmm.
They have a young kid, Stefan Bacic, who can maybe kind of fill in that role. But
Yeah, he's been
um,
good at times too.
if Klopp is going to play Gakpo and Nunez together, and with Gakpo underneath, I can see where this project is maybe going. I've been a little bit more concerned when they've tried Gakpo kind of as a lone striker, almost like a false nine, because when he drops deep, there's no one in the middle. This time, you at least had Nunez, and Nunez is really good at running into channels. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
and then yeah, with Brentford, I think we already mentioned with Brentford. Yeah, and yeah, not having Norgard, I think has hurt them. And
Absolutely.
so we'll move on to Spurs, and these games don't necessarily. Well, I guess it's technically a top four game, but these games don't necessarily matter a ton. So we'll try to go through these a little quicker. Spurs and Crystal Palace. Kane ends up winning the game 1-0. But one thing I want to touch. Oh, I guess before I get to that, it does seem like Pochettino is heavily linked to Chelsea, and we kind of talk about this a little bit with Nagelsmann. I don't really know what the Spurs project is right now. So you kind of imagine Kane's going to want to. Kane probably needs to think about that as well as he like thinks about as his contract runs down because yeah, if it's just Nagelsmann, I don't know if that's enough to keep him. But uh,
I don't know.
yeah,
Be interesting to see.
I mean, right now he's managing under he's got Ryan Mason managing him, and we did see a little changes here, and it actually worked. Now this game was not great on the eye, but what he did, he got Emerson Royal back, and he played Royal as a third center back. He played Christian Romero as the center back, and then Langley. But we saw Eric Dyer benched, which we've been, both of us have been saying that maybe needs to happen, and it finally did happen. Then we saw Ben Davies return, so we saw Perisic kind of benched. Um, and to be honest, the wingbacks were good. The defense was really, really good this game, considering what we saw them versus Newcastle. And Liverpool were able to get three after like 20 minutes, just a week ago. But another thing that was interesting was we saw Richarlison play. And so what this was doing is Richarlison was kind of making, when Kane was dropping deep, Richarlison was making runs a little bit more in the middle and played almost as a striker. But what that was doing is that was allowing Poro that entire channel to run free. So Richarlison was sometimes bringing in and fooling, the fullback, Tyreek, Ty- Tyreek
Mitchell.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes this is what led to the goal. Tyreek Mitchell follows Richarlison, and that allows Poro to run all the way upfield. And when he gets the ball and crosses it in, there's no one near him. So it was actually a pretty good move by Ryan Mason, I thought.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was a big game. Palace are on a bit of a resurgence too, so it's not like the Vieira Palace that we've been seeing.
And I mean, there were a couple of chances in the second. Palace were much better in the second half. Like Zaha was a little bit more involved. But and I guess it just didn't necessarily come off. And then Son almost got a second goal. There was a really good save by I think Sam Johnston, where it looked like Son had a chance to get past the Palace line, and Sam Johnson had an amazing diving save. He didn't go to ground early. He stayed big and then was able to get a glove on it at the very end. Um, and with Palace, I don't really know what Palace necessarily have to play for. I'm not necessarily going to say like that what kind of went into it and they went to a beach, but this game was not good. It was just 7 shots, 2 on target, low passing numbers for both, or low passing numbers for Palace. Tottenham had 432. Spurs had majority of possession, but only 3 shots on target. Five shots total. And 3 big chances were created by Spurs, but 2 missed. But the
Mhm.
XG was like zero point 0.8 to zero point 0.3. Not necessarily great.
Yeah, yeah. Eh.
Um, yeah, and for Spurs, you have to wonder what maybe would have happened had Eddie Royal not necessarily or Emerson Royal not been hurt. Because I don't know if you remember this, back in February they beat this Man City team. This Goliath of Holland and whatnot. They were able to handle them back in February, and Emerson Royal was massive that game. They've also been missing Ben Davis for a number of these games, so like their starting choice wingbacks have necessarily been able to play. And as we've seen, they don't necessarily have progression with their midfield. They've been reliant on their wingbacks to kind of get the ball upfield and kind of create when it hasn't been Kane. And so I guess it's worth saying as well. And then with Harry Kane, Jeremy asked me for my team of the season, and I kind of mentioned I mentioned Holland, Salah, and I think I had Martinelli. I didn't know who to play for
Mm.
maybe the wing spot. But Kane was like, "It's got to be Harry Kane, right?" And I was thinking, "You're right." Because I was just thinking, yeah, this wouldn't work on a team sheet. Like you can't play Harry Kane and Holland together. You think?
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, if you're going to have 3 strikers, you're right. It does have to be Harry Kane because what he's been doing is unreal. He's carried this team by himself. So that's a
He
good
really
shout
has.
by Jeremy.
Yeah, he really has.
And better, decently better at defense. So that's what we're saying as well. And then we'll move on to Chelsea and Bournemouth. Chelsea wins 3-1. It was not necessarily this close. They got 2 goals kind of late after Felix came on. Um, but what happened with Bournemouth is they concede a goal to Conor Gallagher, and again it's just kind of a cross floated in that they can't deal with. This has been Bournemouth's issue all year. They get a really nice goal by Mateus Vinha to make it 1-1. It was 1-1 pretty much the entire game. And then it looks like they maybe could have had a PK given to them, and it wasn't. And then there's the way Chelsea get a free kick in the 82nd minute is really Solanke just slips on the ball and his hand like hits it. So I mean that's just really unfortunate. And then they can't deal with a free kick. It's just a ball again looped into a box, and no one's able to get any kind of head on it or anything. And it's just kind of a finish by Batishele. And then Felix came on, and him and Sterling kind of did a little 1-2 together to kind of bypass everyone. Game was already
Yeah.
over at that point, but the issue I think was more on this was a chance for Bournemouth to at least yeah, they're safe on 39, but this was a chance for them to like get the 40 points, which is usually something that a lot of these teams celebrate. And it was
Mhm.
maybe a missed opportunity. And but going forward next year, they're going to have to find a way to bring in some defensive help to help them on these kind of aerial duels because they can't go another season like this.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. They're gonna have to do some business in the transfer window this summer for sure.
Yep. And then with Chelsea, it was an interesting lineup. It was basically Enzo by holding by himself, and then he had Madueke, Gallagher, Conte, and Mudryk. Mudryk hasn't necessarily worked out, but one player that maybe has in the last couple of games, and I thought he looked really good for Arsenal, even before he scored. I think he did score the goal for Arsenal. Was
Mm,
Madueke, who's gotten a couple chances here and there. And then Havertz isn't necessarily working out, and the problem I
yeah,
think for Havertz, and I think the problem for someone like Mudryk, is I can compare them for like. I can see how Madueke is taking on players and looking a little bit more free. Mudryk struggling to influence the game, and same with Havertz. Just in a few minutes after Felix came on, he was dropping in and linking up with Sterling in a way that Havertz wasn't able to do. And instead Sterling came on and was able to do what Mudryk wasn't able to offer. So um, there's going to be, it's not easy to enter in mid-season, and maybe sometimes it takes a year to see more of these teams blossom. But I think that at least for Havertz, you can't necessarily use that argument. So I'm kind of a little bit more worried about Havertz, to be honest. And you bring in Nkunku in next year,
yeah.
so he's a
Oh,
similar
that's right.
he's another player that kind of does stuff like that.
Yeah, could be Dunzo for Havertz.
And Thiago's at least for the Chelsea defense. No Fofana this game. We don't necessarily know what Koulibaly is going to do. I think Batashile needs to start a little bit more for them. He hasn't. I guess for some, I don't really know what the reasons have been. We haven't even seen him in some of these games. They're out of Champions League now, so that's not an excuse. Um, I think Thiago Silva is maybe time. His time is up. Unfortunately, there
Mm,
have been times where
mm.
he was maybe protected by them playing three at the back. With Reece James kind of doing a little more defensive work a little bit as well. But Thiago Silva was he looked like a statue in this game, and it was just lowly Bournemouth doing it to
Yeah,
him.
and he's getting older too,
And
so
then Enzo, if a team's going to be looking for someone a defensive minded midfielder, kind of a holder, it needs to be Chelsea because I think you need someone to do the defensive work to allow Enzo to progress a little bit more upfield. Um, because I think they're misusing him. Enzo doesn't look like he's really good at defending transitions himself. I mean, Chelsea looked really vulnerable when they did lose the ball, and
mm,
looking back, it's maybe a mistake because they sold Chelsea or they sold Arsenal and Jorginho, like it was only 12. I don't think it was 20 million. It was a relatively small number.
yeah,
I,
I think so.
I think that was a mistake. If they had hung on to him, you could have maybe played Enzo a little bit in a more advanced role this season because he was the
Mm,
only
that's a
DM they
good
had
point.
in their entire team.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a good point.
so it's just Chelsea have just had a weird season. Bringing Lampard just made it even more weird. And another example of maybe trying for this new mythical manager bounce, it doesn't always work out. Or firing Tuchel like 5 games into the season to just bring in the new kid on the block, it doesn't always work out. Um,
Mhm.
and I,
Yeah,
I and speaking of Potter, I think we mentioned it before. It is weird we haven't even heard his name popped up for any of these coaching jobs. And it's just people just look at how the Chelsea thing worked out, which is crazy because he's responsible for a lot of the stuff that De Serbi's been able to improve on at Brighton. So yeah,
yeah, that's true.
and then uh, duh, duh, kind of going up, and then Wolves and Aston Villa. Not really anything happened in this game.
Yeah,
uh,
this game's boring.
Tati Gomez scored in the ninth minute. It's a header. There's not really any whole lot of stuff in the open play. Wolves had 6 shots and 2 on target. Ashton Villa was 16 and only 3 on target. And Wolves did considering how they played versus Brighton, this was a remarkable improvement defensively, at least, because it was like 6 goals or whatever after like 50 minutes last week. So
Yeah.
so there's that worth saying as well. And I think one thing that I'd forgotten about is when Lopetegui came in the on Boxing Day to like because Wolves had fired their manager as well. Wolves were last place in the table. And so
Mm.
this win gets them to 40 points. They're officially safe, and they're safe comfortably. So he's come in and done a pretty good job as well. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. He's been great.
because I don't know what Wolves are. But at the same time, because
Yeah.
they're not really consistent, to be honest, and they're playing with a Diego Costa. So I don't know what they're going to do next year, but at least for the time being, someone like Lopetegui has come in and done a quite a good job. I think he even mentioned after the in a post game that he's managed Real Madrid, he's managed Sevilla, he's managed in cup competitions, cup finals, and he said this was maybe his most important job. So
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
interesting comment to say. And then
Yeah.
Aston Villa haven't necessarily had the best stretch of it for the last couple of games, but they have Spurs next week. I think it's at Aston Villa ground, and I think they're only 3 points from Spurs, so they can get even on the table. And Aston Villa, I think Emery at least. I don't know if Aston Villa want it. Emery, I think, wants Europa, and I think it's still kind of because obviously everyone knows what his pedigree is in that tournament. So
Absolutely.
it's not necessarily done and dusted for them there. And then that is it. Sorry, Rex. I tried to get through it. Sunday is this weekend is quite bonkers as well. Arsenal and Brighton on the weekend, so it's still not
Good game.
necessarily it's not a time for Arsenal to go to the beach and rest up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
gonna be tough.
and then Everton have a tricky game with, or City have a tricky game with Everton. We don't know what they're gonna happen with today with Real Madrid. But it's a quick turnaround to. We just saw what Everton were able to do with the team trying to play through them. Someone like
Yeah.
Decore in transitions. Well, we'll see how City handle that. And then Liverpool face Vardy and friends on Monday. Leicester have like 4 games in a row on Monday for some reason.
Yeah. And they kinda have their back against the wall, so you don't know what kind of Leicester team you're gonna get either.
I'm worried about it because I think I've seen a lot of people online just kind of pencil this in because they look at Leicester's form. I mean, it's the same team that Liverpool struggled with. I think on Boxing Day. I don't know if you remember the game. They won the game because of Wout Faes having 2 own goals.
Huh.
Two hilarious own goals. But it's not like it's and I think Vardy or someone scored, and it was scored an early goal in that game, and it was because they got in behind, and it was just chalked offsides. It wasn't a
Hmm.
clean game when the game was at Anfield, and they're going to Leicester, and Leicester beat them last year. So yeah, it's not all done and dusted yet. So yeah, I'm hoping Liverpool can win out because even if they win out, they're going to need some help. But I personally kind of already assumed that or I've tried to convince myself to get up for listening to that Europa for theme and checking in on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
It's the one competition that Klopp hasn't won in Europe, or I guess like at,
Mm.
at club level. So there's that worth saying as well. They do have a lot of young kids that they can maybe try in some of these tournaments. Get Harvey Elliott, Bacicic, some games. So maybe that's worth saying. I don't necessarily want to see Thiago playing Thursday nights.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
that is necessarily it. Liverpool needs some help, and maybe they'll get it from. It's not going to be Arsenal. Maybe they'll get it from Leeds. Leeds need to do something on Newcastle and United. Wolves need to do something with United. So well, we'll see. Hopefully they don't celebrate that win over Aston Villa too much, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Gonna be interesting.
And then I mean, do you have any thoughts on Champions League, or kind of end it?
Let's just end it. I'm late.
Okay. Oh, my bad. All right.
It'll be fun. Watch it. Watch it. Watch it
There
though.
we
It'll
go.
be
That
fun.
that that is our show.
Not the Italian one.
For
I don't really
us.
care about the Italian one.
Well, there we go. It's a big celebration for Italian football, and Napoli just convinced or just
True.
clinched their title in their league as well. I think the first time in like 30 years. Alex was
Yeah.
saying.
Huge celebrations there.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome, and yeah, that is our show. So for us to at the reserve squad, you stay squatting
Thanks, Squatty. Thanks for listening.
and stop recording.